Chapter 2858. Sakyamuni makes a move. Ghost Plume smiled mysteriously and said, "That might not necessarily be the case. An even more extraordinary genius will be participating this time, and I think that junior brother of mine will be the true first." Jiang Qixing revealed a curious expression and said, "Brother Ghost Plume, could it be that you're talking about the naughty Shiva? A genius that's been giving rise to much discussion recently in your 10 Extremes Corp sect?" Ghost Plume roared with laughter and said, "Looks like I can't hide anything from Brother Jiang. Right, it's the naughty Shiva. I've heard of the naughty Shiva as well. I heard that the naughty Shiva is a genius with a heaven-rank ancestral Tao that your 10 Extremes Corp sect has recently obtained. Moreover, his cultivation speed is extremely swift. He's already stepped into the second step of the Tao advancement in less than a few hundred years, right?" Xing Jing interrupted. "Just wait and see. When the four of you provide guidance to junior brother Sakyamuni, I'll explain the reason I've gathered all of you here." Ghost Plume grinned as he spoke. As soon as Ghost Plume spoke these words, no matter if it was Jiang Qixing, Xing Jing, Su Chenshen, or even the lazy Yi Qidong, their eyes lit up. They had traveled thousands of miles to gather at the 10 Extremes Corp sect. They were not really here to discuss the Tao, unless they had nothing better to do. It was mainly because of the clues Ghost Plume had revealed to them about the place where ancestral shaman Gong had perished. If they were able to enter the place where such an expert had perished, then they would definitely be able to obtain unimaginable precious treasures and benefits. "Huh, Brother Ghost Plume, you're too kind. Once junior brother Sakyamuni wins, then we'll definitely guide him without holding back." Jiang Qixing spoke in a rather carefree manner. Xing Jing and Su Chenshen hurriedly expressed their goodwill as well. The originally lazy Yi Qidong's eyes flickered as he took the initiative to speak. "I can also give you a few pointers. I just hope that Brother Ghost Plume's words are true." Ghost Plume laughed and hurriedly said, "Brother Yi, don't worry. I can guarantee that the information I received is absolutely true. If there's even the slightest bit of falsehood, may I, Ghost Plume, be struck by lightning and die a horrible death." Yi Qidong didn't say much, only nodding. At the center of the lake, Zhuowen defeated his opponents again and again, standing tall without falling. As a result, there were fewer and fewer challengers. Until now, no one dared to challenge him as he stood at the center of the lake. Qiu Linglong was extremely excited. She had watched as Zhuowen overcame all difficulties and triumphed all the way until now. She knew that Zhuowen would definitely obtain first place in this first martial meeting. Boom! Suddenly, a sound of air being torn apart like a thunderclap flashed over, and then a young man with a grand aura flashed over from the shore. The young man's entire body radiated a violet gold light, and there was a golden vertical mark between his eyebrows that looked dignified and mysterious. Zhuowen looked at the young man in front of him. His gaze was calm, but his heart was cold and filled with killing intent. "I'm Sakyamuni, a disciple of the fourth elder Ba Jingwei's line. I've come to challenge you." Sakyamuni had his hands behind his back. His bewitching eyes stared straight at Zhuowen as he continued, "Your strength isn't bad. You're indeed worthy of praise for being able to defeat so many opponents. However, you'll have to stop here because I, Sakyamuni, have come to end you. If you don't want to die, I think it's best if you forfeit. Otherwise, it'll be too late for regrets." Sakyamuni was very proud. He cast a sidelong glance at Zhuowen and didn't even look Zhuowen in the eye. Zhuowen was startled at first, but then he looked at Sakyamuni with interest and said, "Isn't this a martial arts competition to learn from each other? Although death is inevitable in a martial arts competition, isn't it a bit too much to deliberately kill me?" Sakyamuni's gaze was arrogant. He looked coldly at Zhuowen and said, "Senior Ghost Plume didn't say that I couldn't kill you. It's possible that I accidentally killed you. This is an accident. What does your accidental death have to do with me?" Zhuowen smiled. At the same time, he looked at Gui Ling, who was in the pavilion not far away. Ghost Plume narrowed his eyes, as if he didn't hear the conversation between the two. Seeing Ghost Plume's expression, He knew that Ghost Plume was planning to turn a blind eye. In other words, if Sakyamuni really killed him, Ghost Plume wouldn't speak up for him. Although Zhuowen wanted to directly kill Sakyamuni, he knew that he had to make things clear. Otherwise, if he really killed Sakyamuni, there would be trouble. Thinking of this, Zhuowen cupped his fists at Ghost Plume and said in a deep voice, "Senior Ghost Plume, this Sakyamuni brother said that he wants to have a life and death battle with me. I wonder what Senior Ghost Plume thinks." Ghost Plume was startled. He didn't expect Zhuowen to ask for his opinion. He subconsciously focused his gaze on Sakyamuni. Sakyamuni was very conceited. He looked coldly at Zhuowen and said, "A life and death battle? You think too highly of yourself. You're just a new disciple. Although you have some strength, you don't have the qualifications to have a life and death battle with me." Ghost Plume's eyes flickered and said, "You can decide on this matter yourselves. The tournament is free to do as you wish. There are no rules. You don't have to be too rigid." Sakyamuni smiled. He knew that Ghost Plume's words were a tacit approval for him to kill. Sakyamuni was very confident. He knew that Ghost Plume would definitely agree. Because in addition to being the disciple of the fourth elder, Ba Jingwei, he was also Ghost Plume's junior brother. Furthermore, he also knew that Gui Ling had organized the martial arts competition of the Monstrous Genius pageant because of him. It was a stage prepared for him. There was no doubt that he would win first place. As for why Sakyamuni wanted to kill Xiao when who suddenly appeared, it was mainly because he felt a familiar aura from this junior brother. This aura made him very uncomfortable. In addition, Xiao had been in the limelight so many times in front of him. Sakyamuni was very unhappy and wanted to kill Xiao when to establish his prestige. "Thank you for your advice, Senior Brother Ghost Plume." Zhuowen cupped his fists towards Ghost Plume. He was secretly delighted. His gaze towards Sakyamuni became even more unbridled and fierce. Since Ghost Plume had said so, Zhuowen didn't restrain his killing intent and directly revealed it. Sakyamuni was the first to feel this killing intent. He was first startled, then immediately became furious. This kid really didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. He actually dared to reveal his killing intent towards him. He was simply courting death. "Junior brother Xiaowen, you're very brave," Sakyamuni said in a low voice. He kicked off with his right foot and moved as fast as lightning. The purple and gold color on his body became even more intense. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. Only then did he see that the purple and gold color on Sakyamuni's body was a combination of black and gold energy. Zhuowen was very familiar with the gold energy. It was the special energy that Sakyamuni cultivated when he was in the eight heavens. The black energy was full of dense yin qi, which made people's hair stand on end. It should be the cultivation technique that Sakyamuni cultivated after joining the 10 Extremes Yin Corps sect. Chapter 28:59. The Fierce Battle Bang. As the fist and palm collided, a terrifying shockwave spread out. The entire space seemed to have been frozen by this shockwave. The Blue Moon Lake exploded with an even more terrifying commotion. It was as if it had been hollowed out as it continued to churn. Many disciples on the shore of the Blue Moon Lake narrowed their eyes and retreated, watching the great battle in the Blue Moon Lake in fear. Sakyamuni is so powerful. He's already become an eternal overlord. Judging by his battle prowess, I'm afraid he's no weaker than an ordinary creator. Sakyamuni is worthy of being called a once-in-a-lifetime genius in our 10 Extremities Yin Corps sect. He's only joined our sect for a short while, but he's already so strong. Other than Senior Brother Ghost Plume, who else in the younger generation of the 10 Extremities Yin Corps sect can be his match? On the shore, many disciples discussed animatedly. They were shocked by the terrifying power Sakyamuni had displayed. At the same time, many disciples were also shocked by the newcomer named Xiaowen. She had not only withstood Sakyamuni's fierce attacks, but also showed no signs of defeat. Your sect, Sakyamuni, is indeed worthy of his reputation. His battle prowess is indeed terrifying. I can't believe he's reached such a level. In the pavilion, Xingjing clicked her tongue in amazement. Her beautiful eyes filled with amazement. But this newcomer isn't weak either. I think Sakyamuni won't be able to take him down in a short time. He's really the strongest newcomer I've ever seen, Jiang Qixing said. Bang, bang, bang. The shockwaves from the battle between Zhuowen and Sakyamuni grew stronger and stronger. The energy erupting from their palms and fists seemed to be able to split the heavens and earth. It was extremely terrifying. A powerful restriction had been set up around the Blue Moon Lake, but this restriction trembled violently under the increasingly fierce shockwaves of their battle, as if it would collapse at any moment. Ghost Plume's eyes flashed. With a wave of his sleeve, he brought the 5 pavilions out of the Blue Moon Lake. He formed a seal with both hands, and the huge blue moon above the lake emitted an even more terrifying blue light. In the instant that the blue light intensified, the restrictions around the Blue Moon Lake also became much more tenacious and powerful. The originally shaky situation also slowed down a lot. Bang! Above the Blue Moon Lake, Sakyamuni and Zhuowen separated as soon as they clashed. Both rejoiced and looked at each other from a distance. Zhuowen's gaze was as calm as water, while Sakura was filled with shock. His heart was not calm at all. Indra was well aware of his strength. Although his cultivation base was only at the early stage Eternal Lord realm, because of his physique and cultivation method, the 10 ruthless 10 absolutes, he was extremely powerful, enough to fight against a creator. In the same rank, there was basically no one who was his match. But this newcomer's cultivation was lower than his. He was only a Heaven's Mandate Lord, but he'd managed to fight him without losing. This shocked him greatly. Zhuowen looked at Sakyamuni quietly. Although he'd fought Sakyamuni before, after leaving the 8 heavens, his cultivation method and fighting style had changed too much. This time, he knew that Sakyamuni really couldn't recognize him as Zhuowen. Senior brother Indra, earlier when you threatened to kill me, your tone was so tyrannical that it scared me to death. But from the looks of it now, it seems that you were merely boasting earlier. Zhuowen spoke, his tone filled with ridicule. Sakyamuni's expression was ugly. He looked coldly at Zhuowen and said, "You're courting death. I won't hold back. I'll finish you off in one move." With that, Sakyamuni stomped his right foot into the air. A circular wave of air spread out, and he shot out like a bolt of lightning toward Zhuowen. Purplish gold energy revolved around Sakyamuni's body. The moment Sakyamuni arrived in front of Zhuowen, the purplish gold energy suddenly exploded and dissipated, turning into 9 purplish gold giants. The 9 purplish gold giants roared and surrounded Zhuowen. They waved their enormous fists, and all of them charged toward Zhuowen. At the same time, Sakyamuni bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of essence blood. The purplish gold energy around him reached a new level, like a terrifying torrent that enveloped the sky and earth, forming a terrifying purplish gold barrier. Bang, bang, bang. The attacks of the 9 purplish gold giants also came crashing down on Zhuowen. Their fists surged, setting off a terrifying purplish gold wave. Sakyamuni stood on the shoulder of the tallest purplish gold giant, looking down at the tiny figure that was completely engulfed by the 9 attacks, and a mocking smile appeared on his face. "Looks like it's all over." Sakyamuni stood quietly on the purplish gold giant's shoulder and muttered to himself. For once, his eyes relaxed a little. He had to admit that Zhuowen's combat strength was very strong, and even he was wary of him. However, he also knew that his final move was even more terrifying. No matter how strong Xiaowen was, he didn't believe that she could withstand his all-out attack. Ghost Plume stood up and looked at the battle at the Blue Moon Lake with admiration and a trace of pity in his eyes. He felt that both Sakyamuni and Xiaowen were geniuses, but relatively speaking, Ghost Plume admired Sakyamuni more. He had originally planned to rope in Xiaowen to become his right-hand man, but now it seemed that his plan was going to be ruined. After all, he didn't think that Xiaowen could survive Sakyamuni's all-out attack. It looks like the outcome of the final battle has been decided. Ghost Plume coughed lightly and announced, "I hereby announce that the champion of the tournament is Sakyamuni." Before Ghost Plume could finish his words, a wave of millions of feet high suddenly rose from the Blue Moon Lake and rushed straight into the sky, almost washing away the blue moon hanging high in the sky. The 9 purplish-gold giants that were originally hovering on the surface of the blue moon lake roared, and their expressions were ferocious. Then they all collapsed, and even the purplish-gold barrier around them was shattered. A figure that looked like a god or a demon suddenly rushed out from the depths of the blue moon lake, causing a terrifying wave to rise. In this figure's hand was a sharp and powerful blade of light. This blade of light was as tall as a person, and it emitted a blazing light and a terrifying pressure. This person was Zhuowen, and the blade of light in his hand was the sky-splitting blade. Since Zhuowen's Panga sacred body had advanced to 5 stars, the power of the Panga banner's profound meaning had become more and more powerful. This sky-splitting blade originally only covered the surface of Zhuowen's hand blade with a thin layer. But now this sky-splitting blade had naturally formed a huge blade of light, as if it was a real blade. Its power was many times stronger than before. The 9 purplish-gold giants were destroyed by this sky-splitting blade one by one. Sakyamuni staggered. After the purplish-gold giants collapsed, he almost fell. Fortunately, he reacted in time and broke away from the purplish-gold giants, leaving in advance. Whoosh! Zhuowen's eyes were cold, and the corner of his mouth revealed a cold smile. He held the sky-splitting blade in his right hand and suddenly threw it. Suddenly, the blade of light cut through the void and blasted towards Sakyamuni. Chapter 2860. Annihilation Pucci. The sky-splitting blade pierced through Sakyamuni's chest, its terrifying sharpness tearing apart the right side of Sakyamuni's chest along with his shoulder. Blood spurted out like a bloody mist. Sakyamuni's eyes widened in anger as he screamed. Nearly a third of his body had been torn apart, almost annihilated. Even Sakyamuni couldn't bear the intense pain. He roared madly. Sakyamuni was horrified, his eyes wide open, but he still had some consciousness left. He circulated all the energy in his body and retreated in the direction of Ghost Plume's pavilion. In the instant that the sky-splitting blade pierced his body, he had already deeply felt the terrifying, killing intent of Zhuo when crushing down on him. Sakyamuni was terrified. He knew that this junior brother Xiao wanted to kill him. If he didn't retreat now, this person's next attack would completely annihilate him. Sure enough, the moment he retreated, a terrifying gale swept past where he had been, tearing apart space and exploding energy. Sakyamuni was indeed smart. The moment he was defeated, he decisively retreated in the direction of Ghost Plume. He knew very well that this newcomer called Xiao was terrifyingly strong, even stronger than him. Among those present, only an expert of Ghost Plume's level could stop this newcomer. Sakyamuni's mind was filled with a myriad of thoughts. He somewhat regretted his arrogant words from before. He had no enmity with this newcomer, and they didn't even know each other. Just because he didn't like this newcomer, he declared that he would kill him, forcibly raising the martial arts competition to the level of a death match. He had already boasted that he would kill this kid. Since this kid was stronger than him, killing him in return was within the bounds of what he could do. The killing intent in Zhuowen's eyes was almost tangible. He saw that Sakyamuni had decisively dodged his fatal attack. He coldly snorted in his heart and continued to chase after Sakyamuni. However, he quickly sensed that something was wrong. He saw that Sakyamuni was retreating in the direction of Ghost Plume. He also noticed that Ghost Plume was moving the pavilion closer to Sakyamuni. Zhuowen's gaze was gloomy. He knew that Ghost Plume intended to save Sakyamuni. From a moment, Ghost Plume agreed to let Sakyamuni kill him. He knew that Sakyamuni's relationship with Ghost Plume wasn't shallow. But he didn't expect that Ghost would still side with Sakyamuni at such a time. Zhuowen had to kill this Sakura. Even if Gue Ling wanted to save this Sakura, it was impossible. Thinking of this, Zhuowen pointed with his right finger. The power of space-time burst out from his fingertip. With him, as the center, a space-time river appeared. A purple sun rose from the space-time river and hung high in the sky. It was suffused with mysterious energy. Ever since Zhuowen's space-time divine ability was fused with the energy of Tao intent, its power had greatly increased. Moreover, As Zhuan's strength continued to increase, the power of his space-time divine ability also increased with each passing day. Sakyamuni, who was still retreating, was caught off guard and was swept into the space-time river. His speed of retreat suddenly became extremely slow. Sakyamuni knew that things weren't looking good. He immediately saw the purple sun rising high in the sky. His eyes were filled with shock as he thought of something. "You are," Sakyamuni thought of a person. He looked at the youth in front of him in disbelief. "It's me." Zhuan's eyes were cold. His speed increased explosively. Stepping on the purple waves, he appeared in front of Sakyamuni in an instant. His right fist punched out and quickly landed between Sakyamuni's eyebrows. "Stop!" Ghost Plume's expression changed slightly. With a wave of his sleeve, he immediately rushed out of the pavilion and rushed toward Zhuan. At the same time, he shouted to stop Zhuan's current actions. All the hair on Zhuan's body stood on end as he felt the powerful aura coming from Guiling. His heart sank, but his right fist didn't stop at all as it went straight into the heart of Sakra's brows. Rumble! The terrifying fist energy exploded, and Sakra let out a blood-curdling scream. His head exploded, and his wretched body collapsed with a loud bang, turning into a bloody mist. After completely destroying Sakyamuni's physical body, Zhuan waved his right hand and completely collected Sakyamuni's soul. Zhuan felt that Sakyamuni's soul was not ordinary. He had clearly destroyed Sakyamuni's soul back then. Logically speaking, Sakyamuni should have died without any chance of resurrection. However, Sakyamuni didn't die. Moreover, it seemed that this guy's Tao foundation had evolved. His cultivation had improved rapidly, and he had become a genius disciple of the 10 Ultimates Corp sect. Therefore, when he killed Sakyamuni, he didn't completely destroy his soul. Instead, he secretly collected his soul and planned to study it when he returned. The secret to Sakyamuni's immortality must be in his soul. After Zhuan quickly collected Sakyamuni's soul, a fierce attack swept over and blasted toward Zhuan's head. Zhuan's expression changed slightly. He clenched his right hand into a fist and violently punched out, colliding with the fierce attack. A terrifying gust of wind swept out. Zhuan only felt a terrifying surge of energy pouring down from his arm and into the depths of his body. With a muffled groan, Zhuan spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated. He looked gravely at Ghost Plume, who had appeared beside Sakyamuni's corpse. Ghost Plume's expression was very ugly because he realized that Sakyamuni's soul was no longer there. Of course, he didn't see Zhuan collecting Sakyamuni's soul. He only thought that Sakyamuni's soul had been completely destroyed and that he had completely died. At this moment, the surroundings of the Blue Moon Lake were completely silent. All the disciples gathered at the Blue Moon Lake stared blankly at this scene. Sakyamuni's reputation was too great in the 10 Extremes Corp sect. He was once known as the second Ghost Plume. This meant that with Sakyamuni's peerless talent, he would definitely be able to reach the level of Ghost Plume in the future. All the young disciples in the sect did not doubt that Sakyamuni would be able to reach this level in the future. Even though Zhuan's combat strength was terrifying at the beginning, when Sakyamuni attacked, most of the disciples thought that Sakyamuni would win this competition. This was because Sakyamuni's reputation in the sect was too great, almost to the point of being a legend. But now, Sakyamuni had been killed by Zhuan in front of everyone's eyes. No one could fully react. Xiao Linglong, who was in the corner by the shore, turned pale. She also didn't think that Zhuan would really kill Sakyamuni. Junior brother Xiao was too impulsive. How could he kill Sakyamuni? This is going to be troublesome. Xiao Linglong didn't feel the slightest joy of Zhuan's victory. Instead, she was filled with worry and fear. Not only did Sakyamuni have a good relationship with Ghost Plume, but he was also the favorite disciple of the fourth elder, Bak Jingwei. He had even been praised by the sect master, Senki Yin. Chapter 2861. Intervene, junior brother Xiao 1. Don't you think you've gone too far? Ghost Plume's eyes were gloomy. He put away Sakyamuni's body and looked at Zhuan with an unfriendly gaze. The killing intent in his eyes was merciless and targeted at Zhuowen. Senior Brother Ghost Plume, I think you've misunderstood something. Sakyamuni said from the beginning that he would kill me directly. I also told him that according to his logic, I can kill him in return. He didn't object. Since we've already said it from the beginning, this competition is equivalent to a life and death battle. Isn't it normal for there to be casualties? Zhuowen steadied his body and looked coldly at Ghost Plume. At this moment, Zook and Shun, Xing Jing, and Jiang Qixing were all looking at Zhuowen and Ghost Plume with interest. They all knew that Nadi Shiva was Ghost Plume's default #1 in this tournament and had already agreed to let them guide Sakyamuni. Not long after, Sakyamuni was killed by this newcomer, which was a ruthless slap to Ghost Plume's face. Yi Qisheng, who had been lazily leaning on the table, also became interested in Zhuowen. This was especially true when Zhuowen used the Sky Splitting Blade. The aura emitted by the Sky Splitting Blade made him feel an inexplicable pressure. Even though this feeling was very small, he knew very well that it was because Zhuowen's cultivation wasn't high. If Zhuowen's cultivation was the same as his, then the might of that blade of light would probably reach a level that even he didn't dare underestimate. Didn't I tell you to stop? You ignore my words and still killed Junior Brother Shirtion. Are you looking down on me? Ghost Plume said coldly. Senior Brother Ghost Plume, you called out too late. At that time, my attack was like an arrow on a bowstring. I had no choice but to release it. If you had stopped me earlier, I might have been able to stop. Zhuowen shook his head. Ghost Plume's eyes were filled with hostility. He was sure that Zhuowen was lying. He must have wanted to kill Sakyamuni on purpose, but he didn't listen to him at all. However, there was nothing he could do. After all, Sakyamuni was already dead, and this Zhuowen was also a disciple of the 10 Extreme En Corpse sect. As a #1 prodigy of the 10 Extreme En Corpse sect, he could not bring himself to bully the weak. Since you didn't do it on purpose, I won't argue with you anymore. However, Junior Brother Shirtion can't die in vain. Since you killed him, you should receive a certain punishment. As Ghost Plume spoke, he took out a pale yellow scroll from his sleeve and handed it to Zhuowen, continuing, "This is a master-slave contract. Junior Brother Shirtion has a very good relationship with me, so I need to give him an explanation. Please sign this contract." Zhuowen took the scroll and scanned it with his divine sense. His eyes turned cold. The conditions on this scroll were extremely harsh. As long as he signed this scroll, he would be a slave to Ghost Plume for the rest of his life. His life and death would be at the mercy of Ghost Plume. Nothing could defy Ghost Plume. Zhuowen looked at Ghost Plume quietly and said, "Senior Brother Ghost Plume, this contract is too harsh. I'm afraid I can't accept it." Ghost Plume smiled and said, "Junior Brother Shao 1, you must sign this contract. If you don't, I'm afraid it will be difficult for you to leave the 10 Extreme En Corpse sect alive. You probably don't know Junior Brother Shirtion's status in the sect. He is the only disciple of the 4th Elder, Ba Jingwei. Moreover, the sect master has said that when Junior Brother Shirtion reaches the 3rd step of the Dao Confirmation Realm, he is willing to give Junior Brother Shirtion some pointers. Perhaps the sect master will turn a blind eye. However, according to my research of Elder Ba's character, he will definitely not let you off. Even if you're Elder Yin's disciple, you will still not be able to stop Elder Ba. Senior Brother Ghost Plume means that you are the only one who can protect me now?" Zhuowen asked with a smile. Ghost Plume nodded and said, "That's right. Currently, in the 10 Extreme En Corpse sect, only I can protect you. This is your only choice. I think Junior Brother Shao is a smart person and knows what to choose." Zhuowen returned the scroll to Ghost Plume and said with a smile, "Senior Brother Ghost Plume, I appreciate your kindness. As for Elder Ba, I will deal with it myself. There is no need to trouble Senior Brother Shao 1. Ghost Plume put away the scroll that Zhuowen handed back with a gloomy face. A terrifying aura suddenly erupted and crushed toward Zhuowen. "Junior Brother Shao 1, are you sure you have thought it through?" Ghost Plume's tone became unfriendly and even a little forceful. He deliberately released his aura to intimidate Zhuowen. "Of course I have," Zhuowen said calmly. Good. Gui Ling said good 3 times in a row. The aura he released had reached an unprecedented level of terror, pressuring Zhuowen. If it were an ordinary master of destiny, they would have knelt on the ground and been seriously injured by this aura. However, although Zhuowen felt a little pressure, it was not particularly serious. After all, he had the Panga's sacred body. Ghost Plume's aura was not enough to affect him. Ghost Plume also noticed that Zhuowen was not intimidated by his aura. He was slightly annoyed. He reached out his right hand and grabbed Zhuowen's shoulder, wanting to make him kneel in front of him. Zhuowen's pupils shrank. He did not expect Ghost Plume to be so shameless and attack him. However, Ghost Plume's expression changed the moment he attacked. His muscles tensed up, and he immediately retreated a few hundred steps. He looked gloomily at a pavilion not far from Zhuowen. Zhuowen also noticed that an ordinary cup had unknowingly appeared at the spot where Gue Ling had originally been. Coincidentally, the direction in which the cup came from was the pavilion that Gue Ling was looking at. Zhuowen noticed that a lazy man was leaning against the pavilion. He was no stranger to this lazy man. It was the #1 genius, Yi Qidong. Brother Yi, what is the meaning of this? I'm teaching my junior brother a lesson. Are you going to meddle in other people's business? Ghost Plume said in a deep voice. Yi Qidong lazily raised the wine cup in his hand and drank it in one gulp. He looked at Ghost Plume with his long and narrow eyes and said leisurely, Brother Ghost Plume, I don't think what your junior brother did violated the rules of the tournament. How about this? Let's drink together and forget about our enmity with a smile. Thank you, Brother Yi. Zhuowen was very smart. He knew that Yi Qidong wanted to help him, so he quickly agreed. Although he did not know why Yi Qidong wanted to help him, he had helped him after all. He had to express his stance. Ghost Plume was helpless. Since Yi Qidong had spoken, he had to give a latter face. After Ghost Plume withdrew his aura, he coldly said to Zhuowen, Brother Ye's gift of wine is a great honor for you. Why don't you hurry up and toast him? Brother Ghost Plume's status is high. I think it's better for Brother Ghost Plume to scram first. I'll slowly follow behind you, Zhuowen mocked. Chapter 2862. Sakyamuni's divine, soul Ghost Plume looked coldly at Zhuowen, no longer arguing with him, and headed towards Yi Qidong with Zhuowen following behind. Ghost Plume and Zhuowen landed in Yi Qidong's pavilion, and two beautiful maids immediately poured wine for Zhuowen and Ghost Plume considerately. Brother Yi, you can't leave us out. Shuchen Shun, Xing Jing, and Jiang Qixing came uninvited and landed in Yi Qidong's pavilion, each asking for a cup of wine to drink. Yi Qidong toasted everyone, then looked at Ghost Plume and said, Brother Ghost Plume, this child is much more talented than the naughty Shiva, and he's so strong. Yurine Corp's sect is lucky to have received such a good disciple. Although the naughty Shiva is dead, I feel that Brother Ghost Plume should be happy. After all, you found a genius stronger than Sakyamuni. Shuchen Shun, Xing Jing, and Jiang Qixing didn't say anything after Yi Qidong spoke. Their eyelids drooped as if they were mute. Ghost Plume frowned slightly, but he could only nod. He was too afraid of Yi Qidong and didn't dare to refute him. Zhuowen silently drank his wine, wondering what Yi Qidong's goal was to help him. He could see that Yi Qidong was a person with a strong goal. If he didn't have a goal, he would rarely take the initiative to do something. Yi Qidong definitely had his own reasons for helping him, but Zhuowen couldn't figure out why Yi Qidong would help him. After 3 rounds of wine, Yi Qidong suddenly looked at Zhuowen and said, Brother Wen, I think you should know me, so I won't introduce myself. Senior Brother Yi is too polite. Zhuowen said, I saw the blade of light you used just now. It was very powerful, but I've never heard of it before. I wonder what kind of Dao technique it is to have such great power. Yi Qidong's gaze flickered as he asked. When Yi Qidong said this, Ghost Plume and the others also looked at Zhuowen. The move Zhuowen used just now was indeed brilliant, and they knew that it was definitely not an ordinary Dao technique. Senior Brother Yi, you must be joking. That's a secret technique that I obtained by chance. It's not worth mentioning. Zhuowen chuckled. I see. Yi Qidong nodded and didn't say much, continuing to drink. At this time, Zhuowen's communication jade talisman rang out. He glanced at it and then clasped his fists towards Yi Qidong and the others, saying, "Senior brothers, my master has called me back for some matters, so I won't be staying for long." There's also the prize for the first place of the martial competition. I'll give it to junior sister Chiu Linglong. I think that senior brother Ghost Plume is a man of his words. You won't go back on your word, right? Zhuowen couldn't help but glance at Ghost Plume. The latter coldly snorted and said, "Don't worry, I naturally won't refuse the prize for the first place of the martial competition. Since you've given it to someone else, bring that person over." Zhuowen nodded and rushed out of the pavilion, arriving at the shore where Chiu Linglong was. "Junior brother Xiao Wan, you're in big trouble. The naughty Shiva is very famous in the sect, and his background is even more powerful. You killed him, I'm afraid." Chiu Linglong sighed. Zhuowen grinned and said, "I'll deal with this matter. Senior sister Chiu, my master has called me back for some matters. I'm afraid I won't have time to enjoy the prize for the first place of the martial competition, so I'll give it to you. I'll take you to Yi Qidong's pavilion now." With that, Zhuowen waved his sleeve and brought Chiu Linglong to Yi Qidong's pavilion. After exchanging a few more pleasantries, he bid farewell and left. After returning to Yin Wuxia's cave, Zhuowen found a cultivator standing at the entrance of Yin Wuxia's cave. This cultivator was none other than Yin Wuxia. When Yin Wuxia saw Zhuowen coming over, he hurriedly greeted him in surprise and said respectfully, "Master, why didn't you wait for me inside the cave? I saw an acquaintance just now, so I went out to take a look. I've only just returned. Have you taken care of the matter?" Zhuowen said calmly. Yin Wuxia didn't ask any more questions and hurriedly nodded and said, "It's indeed taken care of. I can arrange for you to enter the Umbra Hell tonight as an Umbra patroller." Zhuowen nodded and said, "Then help me get in tonight. Also, I killed someone in the sect just now, so I might need you to clean up my mess." Yin Wuxia didn't mind and said, "Many disciples of the 10 Extremes Yin Corpse sect die every day because of sparring. This is very normal. I don't know whom Master killed, but I'll help you take care of it." Chapter 2863. Ghost Plume's Plans. Tell me, how did you come back from the dead? Zhuowen stopped attacking and looked at Sakyamuni calmly. Sakyamuni's eyes were filled with fear. He pondered for a moment, then said, "I obtained a reincarnation talisman. I placed a strand of my divine soul in the reincarnation talisman and had a chance to reincarnate. When you killed me, the reincarnation talisman was activated, so I had a chance to come back to life. But that was the only chance." Sakyamuni looked at Zhuowen as he spoke. "It's that simple." Zhuowen looked at Sakyamuni in surprise. He had heard of the reincarnation talisman before, but it was extremely rare. Its value was comparable to a Genesis divine medicine. He didn't expect Sakyamuni to obtain such a precious talisman when he was in the 8 heavens. He had to admit that Sakyamuni was very lucky. Sakyamuni saw Zhuowen fall silent and felt a little nervous. He whispered, "Zhuowen, I've already told you how I came back to life. You know my position in the 10 Extremes Yin Corpse sect, and my master, Ba Jingwei, is a vengeful master. His strength is unfathomable, and he is a creator." Before Sakyamuni could finish, he was struck by a bolt of divine lightning. He screamed in pain, and white smoke rose from the surface of his divine soul. "Are you threatening me?" Zhuowen asked calmly. "No, I'm not threatening you. I'm just analyzing the current situation for you. If you let me go, I can let bygones be bygones. If you keep this a secret, my master won't make trouble for you." But Sakyamuni hurriedly explained, but he was met with another bolt of lightning and another scream. "Zhuowen, are you really going to kill me?" Sakyamuni roared, his voice full of anger. He had lost his mind, and his divine soul emitted a powerful light. He rushed toward Zhuowen like a madman. "You're courting death." Zhuowen's eyes were filled with murderous intent. His right hand formed a claw and slammed down. The terrifying divine thunder was like a prison, enveloping Sakyamuni, who wanted to fight to the death. With a shrill scream, Sakyamuni's spiritual soul was completely annihilated by the terrifying lightning. He couldn't be more dead. After destroying Sakyamuni's soul, Zhuowen frowned slightly. He felt that Sakyamuni's soul was behaving strangely. This guy was clearly in the state of a divine soul and had no combat power at all, but he suddenly attacked Zhuowen. It was as if he couldn't wait for Zhuowen to kill him. Zhuowen couldn't help but shake his head at this conjecture. He felt that he was overthinking. Sakyamuni must have really lost his mind, which was why he did such a crazy thing. Zhuowen wanted to ask how Sakyamuni's Tao root had evolved, but unfortunately, he didn't have the chance now. This Sakyamuni was too crazy, so he could only kill him. There's still some time before nightfall. I'll wait a little longer. Zhuowen sighed softly. He sat down cross-legged and began to quietly wait for night to fall. Brother Ghost Plume, it's settled then. We'll take our leave first. See you in half a year. On the Blue Moon Lake, Zukin Shun was full of smiles. He cupped his hands at Ghost Plume, then cupped his hands at Xing Jing, Yi Qidong, and Jiang Qixing before leaving. After Zukin Shun left, Xing Jing and Jiang Qixing bid farewell and left as well. Their faces were filled with excitement, as if they'd obtained some sort of precious treasure. Yi Qidong didn't return. Instead, he glanced indifferently at Ghost Plume and suddenly said, "The place where the ancestral shaman fell is of great importance. I'm sure Brother Ghost Plume has already informed the sect master of the 10 Extremes Corpse sect." Ghost Plume wasn't surprised. He smiled at Yi Qidong and said, "Brother Yi, the place where the ancestral shaman Gong fell is too dangerous. It's an unknown place. Our sect master naturally knows about it. However, our sect master has considered everything thoroughly. He knows that great opportunities are often accompanied by great risks. Our 10 Extremes Corpse sect really wants this great opportunity, but we're also afraid of the great risks involved." Yi Qidong sneered and said, "So, your 10 Extremes Corpse sect wants to share the risk? I think that after today, the place where the ancestral shaman Gong fell will be known by all the major forces of the host region." Ghost Plume cackled and said, "Brother Yi, you're underestimating our sect master's boldness. Haven't you noticed that the attacks of the foreign races on the astral battlefield have become even fiercer recently?" Yi Qidong's expression was cold and said, "You've even spread the news to the foreign races of the primitive heaven domain?" Ghost Plume laughed and said, "Not only the foreign races, but the other forces of the 3 precepts will also send people. Brother Yi, don't worry. You already know where Gong fell. It's in the astral battlefield, but only our sect master knows the exact location." "You're crazy. You're playing with fire." Yi Qidong frowned, his expression cold. Ghost Plume smiled and said, "Brother Yi, you'll know in half a year whether we're playing with fire or not." Yi Qidong regained his composure and nodded to Ghost Plume, saying, "In that case, we'll meet in half a year." With that, Yi Qidong stomped his right foot and left the Blue Moon Lake. Ghost Plume put his hands behind his back and looked at Yi Qidong's departing figure with a strange look in his eyes. He said in a low voice, "The astral battlefield where Gong fell. I'll kick you off your pedestal. It's time for the position of the number 1 genius to change." With that, Ghost Plume returned to the pavilion, and the cultivators around the Blue Moon Lake all left the courtyard. Even Xiao Linglong was sent out by Ghost Plume. Ghost Plume opened the restriction of the pavilion, then flicked his finger and took out Sakyamuni's corpse from the small world. Originally, half of the chest of Sakura's corpse had been blown apart by Zhuo Wen's sky-splitting blade, but now it had actually completely recovered. Apart from the blood-stained remains of his clothes, which showed that Sakyamuni had gone through an extremely cruel battle, there was nothing else that could be seen. Junior Brother Sakyamuni is indeed not an ordinary person. He recovered from such a terrifying injury, but his soul is empty. Could it be that Xiao Wen took it away? Ghost Plume thought of a possibility, and his expression turned ugly. He was about to put away Sakyamuni's corpse and head to Yin Wuxia's cave to find Xiao when the originally motionless Sakyamuni suddenly moved. The vertical slit between Sakyamuni's eyebrows suddenly opened, revealing a golden pupil. The light it emitted was so intense that even Ghost Plume's expression changed drastically, and he quickly retreated. Chapter 2864. Dark Underworld. Junior Brother Shirtion, you've finally resurrected. Ghost Plume let out a sigh of relief. He had some understanding of Sakymuna's physique. He had heard the sect master mention it before, so he knew that Sakymuna's physique was extraordinary. He could revive with just a drop of blood or borrow a soul to revive. Although Ghost Plume had never seen or heard of such a physique, he had never doubted Senki Yin's words. Zhuowen, that son of a bitch, it's actually him. Sakymuna's gaze was cold, and his tone was filled with anger. Soon after, Sakyamuna saw Ghost Plume and calmed down a little. Ghost Plume then asked, Zhuowen? The Zhuowen that junior brother Shirtion mentioned, could it be the Pill Array Immortal Alliance's newly appointed Immortal Master Zhuowen? Sakyamuna sighed and nodded. At the same time, he told Ghost Plume about his grudge with Zhuowen, as well as the truth that Xiao Wen was Zhuowen. That Xiao Wen is that Zhuowen? Since he's an immortal master of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance, why did he come to our 10 Extremities Incorp sect? Ghost Plume frowned. Senior Brother Ghost Plume, I heard from the sect master that the Pill Array Immortal Alliance's alliance head, Ji Wuming, had come to ask for the elusive Underworld Soul Flower, but the sect master didn't give it to him. Afterward, Ji Wuming settled for the next best thing and only asked for a spot to enter the dark underworld, Sakyamuni suddenly said. You're saying that Zhuowen wants to enter the dark underworld soul flower to find it? But why did he pretend to be Yin Wuxia's disciple? Yin Wuxia has guts. Ghost Plume frowned. He suddenly thought of something, and his gaze turned hostile. I'm afraid that Yin Wuxia wants to help Zhuowen get a position as a patrolling soldier in the underworld hell. Then, after obtaining the realm-eluding underworld soul flower, he will leave the underworld hell and immediately leave the 10 Extremes Incorp sect. Sakyamuni also reacted. Let's go. Follow me to Yin Wuxia's cave residence. Although Yin Wuxia is an elder of the sect, abusing the law for personal gain and helping an outsider is simply courting death. Ghost Plume brought Sakyamuni out of the pavilion and headed for Yin Wuxia's cave residence. At this moment, the sun had already set. Yin Wuxia walked out of the cave and brought Zhuowen towards the underworld hell. The dark underworld was located in a sinister valley beside the 10 Extremities Incorp sect. This valley was extremely vast, and it was filled with terrifying yin qi. It was dark and deep, as if it was a terrifying hell. This was the dark underworld valley, a naturally formed and terrifying place. The 10 Extremities Incorp sect was established here because of this dark underworld valley. After the tireless efforts of many generations of sect masters, they finally established the famous dark underworld hell in the dark underworld valley. It could be said that a part of the 10 Extremities Incorp sect's reputation was due to the dark underworld valley. The dark underworld valley security was extremely tight. Teams of fully armed patrolling cultivators could often be seen patrolling the surroundings. Moreover, there were restrictions set up here that emitted waves of energy. It was extremely dazzling to look at, and one could tell at a glance that this was not a good place. Yin Wuxia brought Zhuowen to a remote open space. At this moment, there was a withered old man standing in the open space. Elder Sure, this is a new patrolling soldier. Please arrange a position for him to patrol the dark underworld hell. Yin Wuxia said to the withered old man. The withered old man was expressionless. He glanced at Zhuowen indifferently and waved his hand casually at Yin Wuxia. I understand. You can leave now. I understand the principle of taking someone's money to solve a problem for them. Yin Wuxia whispered a few words to Zhuowen before leaving the dark underworld valley. Ever since Yin Wuxia left, the withered old man lowered his head and looked at a rather large bamboo scroll. It was as if he was completely mesmerized and treated Zhuowen as air. Zhuowen did not feel awkward. Instead, he casually found a rock wall and leaned against it, waiting for the withered old man. Finally, the withered old man put down the bamboo scroll and looked at the sky. Then he pressed on the rock wall behind him, and a deep passage appeared on the rock wall. Come with me. After saying this, the withered old man directly entered the passage not caring whether Zhuowen followed him or not. The passage was filled with a misty gray fog that obscured one's vision. It was eerie. Zhuowen unhurriedly followed behind the withered old man while his divine sense silently extended out. He strangely discovered that what his divine sense probed was actually an expanse of darkness. It seems that this place naturally suppresses divine sense. That's why my divine sense is covered in darkness. Zhuowen guessed. About an hour later, the old man leading the way stopped and fiddled with the rock wall in front of him. Then there was the sound of a mechanism moving. The rock wall slowly opened, revealing a gray world behind it. A gloomy and deathly aura suddenly hit him in the face. Zhuowen's face changed slightly, and his eyes became cautious. This is the patrol's token. You can freely travel through the dark underworld without worrying about being attacked by the same patrol. Also, you must remember that if you can find something good in the dark underworld hell, remember to use this token to record the aura of that thing. Otherwise, it will trigger the restriction of the dark underworld hell. After leaving the dark underworld hell, you can go to the contribution hall to exchange points or treasures. However, you're not allowed to embezzle them. Otherwise, the consequences will be severe. Remember this. Don't be greedy. Only then can you get to the end. Otherwise, your fate will be no different from those foreign cultivators. The withered old man turned around and looked indifferently at Zhuowen. His voice was as cold as a machine's. Zhuowen cupped his hands, but his heart was filled with fear. It seemed that Wuxia was right. The dark underworld hell had indeed been tampered with by the 10 Extremes Corp sect. What made Zhuowen's heart beat faster was that the other forces seemed to be completely unaware of the abnormalities in the dark underworld hell. Moreover, the dark underworld hell still attracted many cultivators to adventure and seek treasures. Fortunately, Wuxia had already planned everything with him. As long as he obtained the elusive underworld soul flower and used the identity of a patrol to bring it out of the dark underworld hell, then with his strength, it would not be difficult for him to escape the 10 Extremes Corp sect. All right, go on in. I have already bent the law by specially giving you an extra patrol. If it were not for Wuxia's request, it would be impossible for you to obtain the position of a patrol in the dark underworld hell. The withered old man was obviously not very interested in Zhuowen. After casually mentioning the things to take note of, he chased Zhuowen out as if he was chasing away the plague. The moment Zhuowen entered the dark underworld hell, the most profound feeling he had was the terrifying aura of death here. It was as if death would approach at any time. Moreover, Zhuowen was surprised to find that in addition to the aura of death that could be seen everywhere, the air of the dark underworld hell also contained extremely rich heavenly energy. Chapter 2865. Nowhere to be found. No wonder so many cultivators still enter the Umbra hell despite knowing how dangerous it is. I'm afraid it's not only because of the abundance of treasures here, but also because of the pure heavenly energy here. Zhuowen sighed. He now understood why so many cultivators entered the Umbra hell. The death chi here is so dense. It's very suitable to cultivate the sacrificial death sword. Zhuowen waved his sleeve and summoned the sacrificial death sword. The Thunderfire sword and Blood Immortal sword also flew out on their own. Brat, you're so mean. You only let Xiao Ji out. Are you trying to trap the two of us here? As soon as the Thunderfire sword appeared, Xiao Hei's shadow appeared and chattered away. Zhuowen felt a headache coming on. This place is not helpful for your cultivation, but it's very suitable for the sacrificial death sword. Why did you two come out? Xiao Hei grinned. Who said it's useless for us? Isn't this the Umbra hell? There must be a lot of refining materials here. There might even be divine artifacts left behind by fallen cultivators. As long as I can find a divine artifact of a very high grade, I can improve myself. Plus, I don't feel at ease leaving you alone outside. I can protect you and ensure your safety. Zhuowen was speechless at Xiao Hei's boasting. However, this guy was indeed improving at a rapid pace. especially after devouring Lei Li Tian's Genesis Divine Artifact and Huang Wu's Life Divine Artifact. This guy's cultivation had leaped into the second step of Dao validation, the arcane stage. Not only the Thunderfire Sword, but the Sacrificial Death Sword and Blood Immortal Sword were also improving. They had both reached the Heaven's Fate grade and were not far from the Mystery grade. Zhuowen had refined these 3 divine swords as his natal divine weapons, and they were also the 3 divine weapons that had been with him for the longest time. As long as there were benefits, Zhuowen would not miss out on them. In the end, Zhuowen gave in to Xiao Hei's coaxing and pestering. In the end, he forged 3 sword hilts and tied them to his back. The Thunderfire Sword, Death Sacrifice Sword, and Blood Immortal Sword were all inverted on the hilts, forming a tripartite formation. As for Zhuowen, he simply held the Ho E Divine Bow in front of his chest. His hair was disheveled, and he looked like a mountain hunter. Zhuowen wasn't worried about people recognizing the Ho E Divine Bow. When the Divine Bow wasn't drawn, it was just an ordinary wooden bow. Furthermore, Zhuowen could also repair the appearance of the bow. Even if Xin came back to life, he might not be able to recognize that the wooden bow on Zhuowen's body, which looked like it would break at any moment, was the Ho E Divine Bow. After doing all this, Zhuowen took out a jade slip, which recorded the locations where the Underworld Soul Flower had appeared in the past. This was what Yin Wuxia had exchanged from the withered old man for a huge price. He planned to let Zhuowen try his luck at these locations. After all, the chances of the Underworld Soul Flower appearing in the past would be much higher. Zhuowen disappeared on the spot like a gust of wind. Zhuowen chose 3 locations. These 3 locations were Skeleton Island, Burial Desert, and Death Hills. The Underworld Soul Flower had appeared in these 3 locations before, and they were all extremely dangerous places in the Underworld Hell. Many experts had fallen there, and their corpses were piled up into piles of white bones. The Underworld Hell was actually equivalent to a complete small world. The landscape inside was basically the same as other worlds. There were mountains, hills, deserts, and other different landforms. However, this small world contained extremely rich and powerful heavenly Tao energy. It was also full of danger, which is why the outside world called it the Underworld Hell. Along the way, Zhuowen met many cultivators in the Underworld Hell. From the clothes of these cultivators, he knew that they were all foreign cultivators. Of course, he also occasionally met the patrolling soldiers of the 10 Extremes Yin Corps sect. However, the patrolling soldiers were dressed exactly the same as the foreign cultivators, so it was difficult to distinguish them. Only between the patrolling soldiers, Zhuowen could sense each other's identity because of the token. Therefore, he could be sure that they were patrolling soldiers. Of course, when they met patrolling soldiers, they basically just glanced at each other and passed by each other. They would not greet each other. Zhuowen felt a chill in his heart. All the patrolling soldiers he had encountered were extremely powerful. These patrolling soldiers were hidden in the Umbra Hell. If they wanted to secretly attack other foreign cultivators, it would be too easy. Moreover, they would catch them off guard and would be difficult to detect. Zhuowen's first stop was Skeleton Island. As the name suggested, Skeleton Island was a strange island made of piles of white bones. In order to enter Skeleton Island, one had to cross a Black Sea. The Black Sea was very terrifying. There were many terrifying creatures hidden in it. Zhuowen saw with his own eyes an eternal Overlord expert accidentally fall into the Black Sea, causing many terrifying creatures to attack him. In the end, he was torn into pieces and couldn't be more dead. Fortunately, he had obtained information about Skeleton Island and knew how to cross the Black Sea to enter Skeleton Island. Therefore, he entered Skeleton Island without any danger. Of course, with Zhuowen's current strength, it was completely possible for him to cross the Black Sea by force. However, it would take a lot of trouble and waste a lot of time. Although Skeleton Island was full of danger, it still attracted many cultivators. Although many cultivators died in the Black Sea, there were still many who landed on Skeleton Island. Zhuowen had gained a lot on Skeleton Island, but compared to his wealth, it was only average. Moreover, he knew that these gains were not his for now. He needed to use the patrolling soldier's token to record their aura. After he left the Umbra Hell, these things would have to be handed over to the Ten Extremities Corps sect to exchange for points or other things. Naturally, he would be exploited by the sect. Towards these, Zhuan was not particularly concerned. What he was concerned about was the birth of the elusive realm underworld soul flower, divine medicine. Zhuan didn't really care about anything unless he obtained something truly valuable in the dark underworld. After all, he was already extremely wealthy, and he even had a Genesis tier divine medicine, so he really didn't care about ordinary things. After 3 days, Zhuan came to the place where the elusive realm flower had appeared on Skeleton Island. However, to his disappointment, he did not find any trace of the elusive realm flower. With disappointment, Zhuan left Skeleton Island and went to the Burial Desert and Death Hills. The Burial Desert and Death Hills were not any less dangerous than Skeleton Island. In fact, they were even more dangerous. Zhuan also encountered a lot of obstacles in these 2 traps and was covered in dust. There was even one time when he was in a life-or-death crisis. His body was blown apart by a terrifying force. Fortunately, Zhuan withdrew in time and relied on his strong self-healing ability to finally escape death. However, the final result disappointed Zhuan. Regardless of whether it was the Life Burial Desert or the Death Hills, the places where the underworld soul flower had appeared were now barren wastelands. Chapter 2866. To meet an old friend again, Zhuan was disappointed. Wuxia guessed that Skeleton Island, Burial Desert, and Death Hills were the places where the elusive nether soul flower would appear again. However, he had explored all of them and found nothing. Kid, perhaps the realm-eluding nether soul flower hasn't appeared in the Umbra Hell at this time. Xiaohei's helpless voice rang out, causing Zhuan's heart to feel heavy. Suddenly, Zhuan saw a somewhat familiar figure looking around in a dilapidated sand dune in front of him. Then, with a whoosh, the figure drilled into the sand dune. Zhuan narrowed his eyes. He felt that the figure was very familiar, but he couldn't put his finger on it. Follow him. Zhuan had a very strong thought in his heart. He had to keep up with this figure. If he missed this figure, he was afraid that it would be too late for regrets. Zhuan quietly moved to the side of the sand dune. After observing for a while, he hid behind another sand dune and observed silently. The moment Zhuan hid on one side of the sand dune, the sneaky figure suddenly came out, looking vigilant and looking around. After confirming that no one was following it, it went back into the sand dune, and there was no movement for a long time. It's him? A trace of surprise appeared in Zhuan's eyes when the figure reappeared. Now that he was closer, he could finally see the true face of the figure. Zhuan had a particularly deep impression of this person's body, which was as fat as a pig's. Because this fatty was Ma Yujia, who had tricked him a few times back then. After Ma Yujia was taken away from the 8 heavens by Shui Wuhan, Zhuan had never seen this fatty again. Today, he did not expect to meet this guy in the dark underworld. Zhuan had interacted with Ma Yujia for a period of time and knew that this fatty was an expert at finding treasures. He would never enter a place without treasures. The fatty's sneaky behavior just now was too wretched. Perhaps there was another world within this sand dune. At this moment, Zhuan was very curious. He did not know what this Ma Yujia had found in the sand dune, but he was actually so cautious. This was the first time he had seen this fatty show such a cautious expression. After waiting for a while, Zhuan noticed that there was no movement from the sand dune for a long time. He quietly approached the sand dune. The surface of this sand dune wasn't much different from the other sand dunes. However, Zhuan could see that the surface of this sand dune was flashing with the brilliance of a restriction. He knew that the surface of this sand dune should be covered with an illusion array. Moreover, the level of this illusion array was not low. Zhuan did not dare to be careless. He summoned the array flags and began to break the illusion array. Although Zhuan's array Dao level was only at the peak of the eternal grade, his understanding had reached the 3rd step of Dao confirming. After all, he had comprehended the true pill array record and past the 12th floor of the Pill Array Pagoda. In addition, Zhuowen had mastered the profound Hong Meng Everlasting, which had the magical effect of destroying all laws. It could break array formations and restrictions that were one level higher than his array Dao level. The illusion array that Ma Yujia had set up on this sand dune was indeed of a very high level. Zhuowen estimated that it had reached the Genesis grade. This shocked Zhuowen. Before Ma Yujia left the 8 heavens, his array Dao level was only a level 9 God array Dao master. It had only been a short while, yet he was already a god of creation stage formation Dao divine master. This rate of improvement was a little too terrifying. Zhuowen used the Hong Meng Everlasting and spent about an hour to break open a gap in the illusion array that was just big enough for one person to pass through. After he entered the gap, the illusion array returned to its original state. What appeared in front of Zhuowen was not the sand dune from before, but a bottomless pit. This pit was really deep, and the strong wind that came from the depths was extremely cold. Zhuowen's body trembled, and he could not help but feel a deep chill. Zhuowen frowned slightly. He released his spiritual consciousness and found that it was useless in this pit. I'll trust this fatty this once. Zhuowen gritted his teeth and drilled into the pit. However, the moment he entered the pit, he found that something was wrong. The moment he stepped out, the depths of the pit seemed to have a mind of their own. A strong wind pressure swept out and firmly sucked Zhuowen into the depths of the pit. This wind pressure was so strong that Zhuowen could not help it even if he urged all the strength in his body. Zhuowen now felt the same panic he felt when he fell from a tall building when he was still immortal. But soon, Zhuowen calmed down. He adjusted his falling posture and paid attention to the surrounding environment. He believed that his Panga's sacred body would not be smashed into a meat patty even if he fell from high altitude. Of course, with his current strong recovery ability, he was not afraid of falling into a meat patty. He could completely recover in a short time. Bang! Soon, Zhuowen's feet landed on the ground, and then there was a terrible explosion. Zhuowen's feet were directly bent, and his flesh and blood were squeezed into a bloody foam. His legs were directly disabled. This disability spread to Zhuowen's abdomen. It looked like the lower half of Zhuowen's body was completely broken and turned into a bloody foam. Zhuowen's face was pale, and his forehead was covered in cold sweat. However, his strong recovery ability made his bloody lower body gradually recover, and his legs gradually grew. Zhuowen rested for more than 2 hours. When his legs completely recovered, he slowly stood up and looked around. He was surrounded by cold rock walls, and in front of him was an endless tunnel. He did not know where it led to. Zhuowen breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, there was no other danger in the place where he fell. Otherwise, with his serious injury, his life would have been in danger. Zhuowen's eyes were sharp. He noticed that on the other side, he saw a human-shaped bloodstain. He was speechless for a while. He could imagine that Ma Yujia, who was one step ahead of him, had suffered a great loss. He fell to the ground and was not much better than him. However, what made Zhuowen serious was that Ma Yujia had left this place before him. In other words, Ma Yujia had also quickly recovered and continued to move forward. Zhuowen could recover so quickly thanks to his Pangu sacred body. However, it was impossible for Ma Yujia to cultivate the Panga's sacred body, but this guy could recover so quickly. Zhuowen knew that Ma Yujia definitely had a big secret. Zhuowen recalled the first time he met Ma Yujia. He seemed to have never seen through this guy. He really did not know where this guy came from. Zhuowen did not think too much and walked toward the depths of the tunnel. He was not fast or slow, and he was very vigilant. According to his past experience, the places that Ma Yujia entered were indeed places of treasure, but at the same time, they were also very dangerous places. It was not the first time that he had followed Ma Yujia. He knew very well about this guy's character. Along the way, Zhuowen did not encounter any danger. He was very calm. Chapter 2867. Double dragon formation in front of this ancient building stood a huge hollow door. This door was similar to the southern heavenly gate in China's ancient myths and legends. Although it was very dilapidated, he could still vaguely see the magnificent and majestic aura of the gate in the past. It was a pity that it was too badly damaged. When Zhuowen's gaze passed through the door and came to rest on the ancient buildings, he couldn't help but gulp, and his eyes burned with shock. Among the ancient buildings, he saw an ancient medicinal field. Medicinal qi was dense in this medicinal field, and it took the form of numerous rare and exotic beasts. It was a magnificent sight to behold. Other than the ancient medicine field, Zhuowen also saw a sword tomb on the other side. The ancient sword inside looked very broken, but it faintly revealed a brilliance. At first glance, one could tell that this ancient sword had an extraordinary origin. Its power was peerless, and it was not an ordinary divine sword. As for the sword spirits of the 3 divine swords on Zhuowen's back, they roared in Zhuowen's mind and threatened to go to the sword tomb to cultivate. The divine swords in the sword tomb were the best materials for their cultivation. No wonder they were so excited, like hungry wolves seeing delicious meat. In addition, Zhuowen also saw piles of special-grade heavenly Tao origin crystals scattered around the ancient building like ordinary stones. Realm elusive underworld soul flower. Zhuowen's eyes fell on a corner of the ruins. There was a strangely shaped god flower growing there. On the stamen of the flower, there were faces of souls. It was as if this god flower had grown from hell. Zhuowen felt excited in his heart. He never thought that following Ma Yujie to these ruins would actually allow him to see the realm-eluding underworld soul flower that he yearned for in his dreams. Who is it? At this moment, Ma Yujie was focused on breaking the restriction formation outside the door. Suddenly, he stopped what he was doing and looked at the tunnel exit with an unfriendly gaze. Zhuowen had a bad feeling in his heart. He could feel Ma Yujie's aura locking onto him. Just now, he was too excited when he saw the realm-eluding underworld soul flower. Therefore, he didn't stabilize his mind and allowed Ma Yujie to sense it. Still not coming out? Ma Yujie's voice was very cold, containing a sharp killing intent. Brother Ma, what a coincidence. I didn't expect to meet you here. Zhuowen had no choice but to walk out of the tunnel and meet Ma Yujie's eyes. Ma Yujie stared blankly at Zhuowen, then flew into a rage and said, "Who are you? Why are you calling me Brother Ma? Do we know each other very well?" Zhuowen was a little confused, but he quickly remembered that he had changed his appearance. He immediately removed his disguise and returned to his original appearance. "Brother Ma, don't you recognize me?" Zhuowen said indifferently. Ma Yujie's eyes widened as he said speechlessly, "Zhuowen, it's you again. Why do I always run into you whenever I find something good? I'm warning you. I was the one who discovered this place. If you dare to take a share of the loot, I'll definitely beat you up so badly that even your mother won't be able to recognize you." Ma Yujie took a few steps back, and the speechless expression on his face became even more pronounced. He felt like he had encountered 8 lifetimes of bad luck. Every time he encountered something good, he would run into this Zhuowen. Who had he offended? Brother Ma, if I'm not mistaken, the restriction on the door of this ancient building should be the Twin Dragon Infernal Formation, right? You won't be able to break this formation by yourself. Zhuowen glanced behind Ma Yujie and saw through the actual situation of this grand array at a glance. The Twin Dragon Infernal Formation was a god of creation pinnacle stage killing formation. Its power was definitely one of the strongest among all god of creation stage killing formations. Moreover, the method to break this Twin Dragon Infernal Formation was very strict. It required the cooperation of 2 divine formation masters. Otherwise, even if one divine formation master's formation skills reached the level of the omnipotent master, they still wouldn't be able to break this formation. Ma Yujie gritted his teeth and said, "Do you think I don't know the actual situation of this formation? If you want to break this formation, you need 2 divine formation masters whose formation skills have reached the God of Creation stage or above. My formation skills have already reached the God of Creation stage, but what about you? I don't believe that your formation skills have also reached the God of Creation stage." Ma Yujie stuck out his big belly and looked at Zhuowen from the corner of his eyes. His disdain was especially strong. Zhuan smiled and said, "Brother Ma, although my formation skills haven't reached the God of Creation stage, I'm already at the peak of the Eternal Overlord stage. Moreover, I have a secret technique that can break God of Creation stage formations." Ma Yujia's face stiffened as he looked at Zhuan in disbelief. He kept sizing him up as if he was looking at a monster. "How long has it been? Your formation skills have already reached the peak of the Eternal Overlord stage? Are you a freak?" Ma Yujia didn't quite believe it. "Whether it works or not, we'll know once we work together to break this twin dragon infernal formation. If I can't break it, I'll automatically withdraw, and you can do whatever you want here. However, if I help you break it, I have to make it clear in advance that we'll split the loot 50-50. That's fair enough, right?" Zhuan said calmly. Ma Yujia flatly denied it. "You wish. Do you know how much I suffered in order to find these ruins? You just followed me here to break a formation, and you want to split the loot? You're dreaming." Zhuan was neither hurried nor slow as he smiled faintly and said, "Since Brother Ma doesn't agree with this method of distribution, then forget it. I'll take my leave. If any bad rumors spread outside, then Brother Ma shouldn't suspect me. I'm an open and above-board person. I definitely won't reveal the secrets of this place." Ma Yujia's face was terrifyingly gloomy. He secretly cursed Zhuan for actually threatening him. "Brother Zhua, I believe that you're an open and above-board person, but you also know that I, Ma Yujia, am a meticulous person. These ancient ruins are extraordinary. I'm actually more willing to believe the dead." Ma Yujia grinned, and an extremely terrifying aura erupted from his body. The killing intent in his eyes was undisguised. Boom! Ma Yujia's right foot suddenly stomped on the air, and the entire space collapsed. Ma Yujia's fat body was like a meatball, and he suddenly shot forward. Because his speed was too fast, an extremely terrifying explosion erupted in the air. Wherever Ma Yujia's body passed, the space collapsed, forming a terrifying black hole. Zhuan's face changed slightly. Ma Yujia's speed was unbelievably fast. To Zhuan's horror, Ma Yujia's fleshly body had to endure a terrifying amount of pressure while moving at such a terrifying speed. The fleshly body of the average cultivator would only be able to endure for a few breaths worth of time before being torn apart. However, Ma Yujia was not injured at all, and his speed was even increasing. Zhuan didn't dare to be careless. He put his palms together, and his body emitted a sparkling light. Chapter 2868. Breaking the Formation Together Rumble. Zhuan crossed his hands and blasted them out. With the power of the 5-star Pangu's sacred body, he performed the tyrannical art of slaughtering Tao. His hands turned into 2 peerlessly sharp blades and slammed onto Ma Yujia's body. Puff! Zhuan spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated. His hands were bent at an irregular angle. Blood spurted out, and his bones were broken. Flesh and blood protruded out. It was a horrifying sight. On the other hand, Ma Yujia let out a blood-curdling scream. His chubby body was directly ejected out like a meatball. He flew out and directly smashed on the ground. From his chest to his back, a bloody hole appeared. He had been directly penetrated. Ma Yujia rolled on the ground and lay on his back. His round face was filled with pain. "Isn't your clone King Devourer? How can King Devourer's body be so terrifying?" Ma Yujia asked in a trembling voice. Zhuan also grimaced in shock. How could Ma Yujia's body be so freakish? He was not at a disadvantage when he clashed head-on with his body. He cultivated the Pangu sacred body, which could be said to be the strongest body in this starry sky. "What kind of body do you have? How can it be so strong?" Zhuan asked coldly. His hands glowed with crystal light, and the terrifying injuries on his hands began to heal. Ma Yujia was dumbfounded. Zhuan's physical body was recovering a little too quickly. This was simply too unconventional. Ma Yujia gritted his teeth and took out a green paste from his spiritual ring. He applied it on his chest. Miraculously, the terrifying injuries on Ma Yujia's chest were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Zhuowen and Ma Yujie stood facing each other from a distance. When both of their injuries were completely healed, they stopped fighting and stared at each other. "Brother Zhua, you've changed after 3 days. As your brother, I'm really happy that you've achieved what you have today." Ma Yujie laughed heartily and gave Zhuowen a bear hug. It was as if nothing had happened when Ma Yujie tried to kill Zhuowen. Zhuowen also laughed hypocritically. He gave Ma Yujie a bear hug and said, "Brother Ma, you're the same. You're really talented. It hasn't been long, but your strength is already so strong. It's really surprising." Xiao Hei crossed her little paws in front of her chest and looked speechlessly at the two guys who were hugging each other. She muttered, "These two hypocrites, I really can't stand it anymore. Brother Zhua, you and I are brothers. As your brother, I won't let you suffer a loss. How about this? Let's split the items in this ancient ruin 30 to 70. This is the biggest compromise I can make. You should know how much effort I've put into finding this ancient ruin." Ma Yujie had a pained expression on his face, as if Zhuowen had taken advantage of him. Zhuowen still had a smile on his face. While saying that it was easy, he refused to give in on the division and insisted on a 50 to 50 split. The hypocritical laughter of the two guys continued to spread. The artifact spirits of the three divine swords behind Zhuowen couldn't stand it anymore. They unsheathed their swords and distanced themselves from these two hypocrites. After a while of bargaining, the two came to a final agreement. They decided to split the loot 40 to 60. Zhuowen would get 40%, and Ma Yujie would get 60%. Now that the division of loot had been completely settled, Zhuowen and Ma Yujie became even more intimate. They put their arms around each other's shoulders, as if the life and death duel had never happened. "Brother Zhua, the twin dragon Helphine array is not simple. You and I will come to the dragon head of this array and break it at the same time." Ma Yujie looked at Zhuowen with a serious gaze. He was actually still a little worried. After all, Zhuowen was only a divine array master at the peak of the eternal grade. He was afraid that Zhuowen would cause some trouble when breaking the array. If that happened, he would be in trouble. "Brother Ma, don't worry." Zhuowen chuckled and came to the upper left corner of the gate. He formed a seal with his right hand and blasted it out. Suddenly, invisible ripples spread out. The invisible force at the upper left corner of the gate suddenly rose like a violent storm, and a huge dragon head appeared in midair. Roar! The dragon head roared fiercely, as if it was very angry, and rushed towards Zhuowen. Ma Yujie was relieved when he saw that Zhuowen had easily found the position of the dragon head. He rushed to the other side of the gate and pointed his finger, activating another dragon head. Zhuowen kept forming seals with both hands. At the same time, he used the power of the infinity primordial chaos. Powerful restriction fluctuations spread out from his hands. Although the dragon head manifested by the twin dragon Helphine array was terrifying, it could only roar under the suppression of Zhuowen's infinity primordial chaos. It was extremely passive. "Break!" Zhuowen's eyes were cold, and he pointed his finger, activating the power of the infinity primordial chaos to the extreme. He fiercely pointed his finger between the dragon head's eyebrows, and powerful energy poured into the dragon head. Roar! The dragon head screamed in pain and quickly dissipated. At the same time that Zhuowen dealt with this dragon head, Ma Yujie's side was also quickly completed. The collapse of the two dragon heads caused the restriction on the gate to gradually dim. "Brother Zhua, I really didn't misjudge you. Although your formation skills haven't reached the Genesis tier, I have to admit that your formation skills are impressive," Ma Yujie said excitedly. "Let's go in. You said that we'll split the things here 40 to 60. You can't go back on your word," Zhuowen said solemnly. Ma Yujie's expression was ugly, but he could only nod. After all, he had already discussed this beforehand. Moreover, Zhuowen's strength was not inferior to his at all. He couldn't kill him to silence him, so he could only obediently split the spoils with Zhuowen. The two of them first arrived at the ancient herb field, and their eyes instantly became bloodshot when they saw the numerous translucent godly medicines in the field. This was because they discovered that there were more than 80 godly medicines in the field, and all of them were Genesis tier godly medicines. Aside from that, there were 5 godly medicines standing in the center of the field, exuding an extremely terrifying medicinal aura. These 5 godly medicines were far more powerful than the godly medicines in the surroundings, and their medicinal effects were also more powerful. These are creation tier godly medicines, Mayugia said with bloodshot eyes. I want 3 of these 5 godly medicines, Mayugia said as he rushed toward the center of the herb field. Zhuan was not to be outdone, and he followed closely behind. However, he immediately felt a terrifying pressure acting on his body the instant he entered the herb field. Roar! 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 The terrifying medicinal effects above the herb field manifested numerous mutant beasts, and they all roared as they charged toward Zhuan and Mayugia in a frenzy. They unleashed terrifying attacks in an attempt to annihilate these 2 intruders. One had to admit that these mutant beasts were quite a big obstacle for Zhuan and Mayugia. There were over 80 God of Creation Stage divine medicines and 5 Creation Stage divine medicines, and the medicinal power contained within them was extremely terrifying. The 2 of them hadn't even approached the center of the herb field, and many terrifying wounds had already appeared on their bodies. Blood splattered everywhere, and they were in an extremely wretched state. Chapter 2869. Plundering the 2 of them finally arrived at the center of the medicinal herb field after a series of twists and turns. Mayugia waved his hand and actually intended to envelop all 5 creation divine medicines within it. Zhuan's eyes were sharp, and he had already noticed Mayugia's movements. He snorted coldly and struck out with his right hand, causing Mayugia's hand to deviate. Mayugia was very thick-skinned, and he merely chuckled. Then he changed the direction of his hand and collected 3 stalks of creation-grade divine herbs. Zhuan didn't bicker with Mayugia. Instead, he collected the remaining 2 stalks of creation-grade divine herbs and began to harvest the other Genesis-grade divine herbs in the herb field. Mayugia's speed was even faster than Zhuan's. In the instant that Zhuan was harvesting the divine herbs, he also joined in the harvesting team. His movements were much faster than Zhuan's. In a short while, all the divine herbs in the ancient herb field were collected by the 2 of them. Of course, Mayugia was also a man of his word. He split these Genesis tier divine medicines 40 to 60% with Zhuan. Zhuan obtained more than 30 Genesis-grade divine herbs, and he was very satisfied. He knew that with these 30 Genesis-grade divine herbs, he could continue to refine Genesis-grade divine pills. He was very confident that he could raise his alchemy level to the Genesis grade. Brother Ma, in this ancient ruin, I only want the elusive underworld soul flower and the ancient sword tomb. I'll give the rest to you. What do you think of this distribution? Zhuan suddenly said. Mayugia's gaze was already fixed on the ancient sword tomb. Now that he heard Zhuan's words, he originally wanted to refuse. However, after thinking about it, he nodded and agreed. Elusive underworld soul flower? Isn't that a creation-grade divine herb? Moreover, I've heard of this divine herb. Its effects are very weak. What do you want this divine herb for? Mayugia asked as he looked at Zhuan in surprise. This is my personal matter. Brother Ma, you don't have to worry about it. I see that this ancient ruin is very big. I only want this sword tomb and the elusive underworld soul flower. I won't fight with you for the other things inside, Zhuan said seriously. His objective in coming to the Umbra Hell was for the realm-fleeing underworld soul flower. Now that he had already found the realm-eluding underworld soul flower, Zhuan naturally did not intend to stay here for long. Furthermore, he had felt a sense of unease since the beginning. Mayugia grinned and patted Zhuan's shoulder. You're really my good brother. The origin of this relic is extraordinary. You're really bold to give it up just like that. Brother, I won't chat with you anymore. I'll go in and see if there's anything good. When I come out, I'll talk to you again. As he spoke, Mayugia impatiently entered the depths of the ruins. His laughter was extremely sharp, and ear-piercing. Xiaohei, I'll leave the sword tomb to you guys. I'm going to pick the elusive realm underworld soul flower. Zhuowen said. The three divine swords on his back were all unsheathed and rushed toward the sword tomb not far away. The elusive realm underworld soul flower grew in a rather remote crevice between rocks. The pitch-black petals were constantly swaying, revealing faces that looked like vengeful spirits. It looked extremely strange. Zhuowen approached and heard the ear-piercing roar. He frowned slightly. This elusive realm underworld soul flower was really strange. The roar actually had the effect of shaking his soul. Just now, when he came into contact with the roar, his soul shook unsteadily and faintly felt a stabbing pain. Fortunately, Zhuowen's soul was much stronger than an ordinary cultivator's. After the initial discomfort, he gradually adapted. Zhuowen carefully observed the elusive realm underworld soul flower in front of him. His eyes flickered. With a stroke of his right hand, he kept the elusive realm underworld soul flower into his macro world. At the same time, he set up layers of powerful restrictive arrays around the elusive nether soul flower to prevent the elusive nether soul flower's aura from leaking out and being discovered by the 10 ultimate in-corpse sex spies in the Umbra Hell. After doing all this, Zhuowen returned to the vicinity of the sword tomb. He was somewhat speechless to find that the three divine swords were already trapped in the sword tomb. There were a considerable number of divine swords inserted in the sword tomb. Each of them shone with a powerful aura. The divine swords inside were definitely not ordinary divine swords. However, the sword tomb had been set up with a powerful trapping formation. Once someone entered the sword tomb, they would immediately trigger the trapping formation in the sword tomb. The three divine swords did not know that there was such a powerful trapping formation in the sword tomb, so they entered the sword tomb leisurely. They did not expect to trigger the trapping formation and be trapped inside. Boy, hurry up and get us out of here. I don't know which bastard set up such a powerful trapping formation in the sword tomb. Xiaohei cursed and urged Zhuowen to release them. Zhuowen nodded and set up array flags. Terrifying array Dao power spread out. Combined with the profound meaning of Hongmeng Wuji, he easily broke the trapping formation in the sword tomb. The trapping formation in the sword tomb was only at the Genesis level. Moreover, it was very old. Therefore, it was not difficult for Zhuowen to break the trapping formation. Xiaohei, how long will it take for you to cultivate with the help of the divine swords in the sword tomb? Zhuowen looked at the three divine swords that had escaped from the trapping formation and asked. Xiaohei was very excited and said with bright eyes, "This sword tomb is really a treasure trove. The quality of the divine swords inside is very high. The benefits for our cultivation are really great. With this sword tomb, I have no problem breaking through to the eternal level. Little Shui and Little Ji also have a chance to break through to the eternal level. It will take at least 3 months to half a year. After all, we also need time to digest." Zhuowen was speechless and said, "That's too long. How about this? I'll move the sword tomb into the great world. You guys can cultivate slowly inside. I'll be leaving soon." The three divine swords had no objections. Therefore, Zhuowen dug out the sword tomb and moved it into the great world. After doing this, Zhuowen was about to leave the ruins when he felt a faint vibration under his feet. Moreover, the vibration was getting stronger and stronger, like a sudden tsunami. It was very sudden. Then, Zhuowen saw a round figure in the depths of the ruins. It was fleeing from the depths in a very sorry state. "Ma Yujie." Zhuowen's eyes were sharp and naturally recognized the round figure's identity. But soon, Zhuowen's expression changed drastically because he saw a black swarm of insects behind Ma Yujie. The black insects were about half the size of a palm. They looked a bit like beetles, but they were not beetles. Moreover, when the black insects walked, they spewed black, poisonous gas from time to time, rising like clouds. The toxicity of this poisonous gas was very terrifying. After coming into contact with it, an extremely tragic collapse occurred. Chapter 2870. Leave. Damn it. What did this fatty do in the ruins? Zhuan's pupils shrank, and without thinking, he ran away. There were simply too many of these black bugs. Furthermore, the poisonous gas they emitted was extremely terrifying. If there were only a few of them, Zhuan would not be afraid. However, with so many of them, Zhuan would not be able to handle them. Moreover, this was Ma Yujia's fault, and Zhuan wasn't going to take the blame. Sigh. Brother Zhua. Ma Yujia, who was running away from behind, saw Zhuan running away so quickly, and his face turned ugly. He had indeed seen many rare treasures in the depths of the ancient ruins. With Ma Yujia's temperament, he would naturally plunder any rare treasures he saw without any scruples. However, Ma Yujia's luck was very bad, and he accidentally encountered a forbidden array in the depths of the ancient ruins, which released these terrifying black bugs. With Ma Yujia's strength, he naturally wasn't afraid of ordinary bugs, but these bugs were too strange, and the poisonous gas they emitted was too much for Ma Yujia to handle. Zhuan pretended not to hear Ma Yujia's call, and his speed was indeed faster. After a while, Zhuan left the area of the ancient ruins passageway and reappeared on the sand dune he was at before. Brother Zhua, you're too unkind. How could you just leave me in the lurch? Ma Yujia was panting, and after a while, he appeared beside the sand dune and directly lay on the ground, panting heavily without any grace. Zhuan knew that this guy was pretending. With their cultivation, how could he be so tired after running such a long distance? Brother Ma, you might have misunderstood. I wanted to leave all the good things in the ancient ruins to you, and I didn't want to disturb you, so I left in a hurry. But before I left, I seemed to have vaguely seen something surging out from the depths of the ruins. Why is that thing gone now? Zhuan put on an act. Ma Yujia despised Zhuan's pretense, but he patiently explained that thing should be the guardian of the ancient ruins. It has some restrictions and can't leave the ancient ruins. After I escaped from the ancient ruins, those insects stopped at the gate and didn't dare come out. Zhuan nodded, then suddenly said meaningfully, Brother Ma, you should also know about the underworld hell. I'm afraid it won't be easy for you to bring the things you obtained here out. Ma Yujia chuckled. Of course I know about this, but before I entered the underworld, I had already obtained a position as a patrolling soldier. I won't be targeted once I leave the underworld. But Brother Zhu? At this point, Ma Yujia's smile grew even wider. He wanted to see Zhuan make a fool of himself. His smile was very subtle. What a coincidence! Brother Ma, I also obtained a position as a patrolling soldier. Zhuan said indifferently. Ma Yujia was startled. Disappointment flashed in his eyes, but he quickly regained his composure and said, It is indeed a coincidence. Since Brother Zhua and I are both patrolling soldiers, then we can travel together and leave the underworld hell. Now that we are on the same side, we must help each other. Otherwise, it will be troublesome to leave the 10 extremes in corpse sect. Zhuan's eyes flashed. He knew that Ma Yujia's intelligence network was very strong. He knew much more than him. Brother Ma, there is no need for that. I think it is a rare opportunity for you to come to the underworld hell. There are too many good things inside. You should stay for a while. Because I have obtained what I wanted, I will not stay for long. Zhuan smiled insincerely. He had Yin Wuxie to take care of him outside. It was not too difficult to leave the 10 extremes in corpse sect. Naturally, he did not want to go out with Ma Yujia. Otherwise, one more person would mean one more layer of risk. Ma Yujia saw Zhuan's strange expression and his eyes darted around. He laughed and said, Brother Zhua, you are wrong. I have also obtained what I wanted. I do not want to stay here for long. It is fate that we met. Since we met, we naturally cannot part like this. Let's go out together and find a restaurant to catch up. I will treat you to a meal. How about it? Ma Yujia patted his chest and was very forthright. However, Zhuan cursed in his heart. This Ma Yujia was entangled with him. He actually decided to follow him at this time. Although Zhuan wanted to send Ma Yujia away, Ma Yujia was too friendly. He put his arm around Zhuan's shoulder as if they had been old friends for many years. Zhuan was helpless. Although this Ma Yujia could be very deceitful at times, he was not a bad person. When interacting with him, he always kept things straight and would not play dirty. Moreover, this Ma Yujia's strength was indeed strong. If something unexpected happened in the 10 Extremes In Corpse sect, he could borrow Ma Yujia's strength. Thinking of this, Zhuo no longer objected to Ma Yujia joining them. Because the two of them were patrolling soldiers, they could not directly leave through the exit of the Yin underworld. They needed the withered old man who had brought them in before to lead them back into the 10 Extremes In Corpse sect. Zhuo and Ma Yujia took out their patrolling soldier tokens and sent a message. After waiting for a while, the stone wall opened and a withered old man walked out. The two of you have just entered the Yin underworld, and you're already planning to leave? The withered old man looked at Zhuo and Ma Yujia in surprise. Hee, Elder Sure, we found something good in there. Aren't we rushing to the contribution hall to exchange for points? Ma Yujia said enthusiastically. The withered old man looked at Ma Yujia and said, What good thing is it that you are rushing to exchange for points? There are rules for patrolling soldiers. I can't say these things. I think Elder Sure knows better than me. Ma Yujia stuffed a storage ring into the withered old man's hands and smiled. The withered old man casually checked it and smiled. He put away the ring and said, Of course I know the rules. You guys can go now. With a smile on his face, Ma Yujia led Zhuo into the tunnel within the rock wall. After leaving the Yin underworld, Ma Yujia suddenly looked at Zhuo and said, Brother Zhuo, where should we go next? Zhuo was speechless. It seemed that this Ma Yujia was really riding on his coattails, thinking that he had a convenient way to leave the Yin Corpse sect. Right now, we need to find a person. This person is the 9th elder of the Yin Corpse sect, Yin Wuxia. He could take us out of the Yin Corpse sect. Zhuo said calmly. So you got in through connections. If you had the help of the elders of the Yin Corpse sect, it would be easy for you to leave. Brother Zhuo, you are really thoughtful. You are indeed a good brother of mine, Ma Yujia. Ma Yujia was very thick-skinned. He directly called Zhuo brother, as if they were very close. Zhuo was too lazy to pay attention to Ma Yujia. He walked straight to Yin Wuxia's cave. He had a bad feeling in his heart. With his personality, if Ma Yujia followed him, he would naturally ask for a reward. But he didn't. Chapter 2871. Entrusted Zhuo arrived in front of Yin Wuxia's cave abode. After sending a message to Yin Wuxia, he waited for a while. However, Zhuo quickly realized that something was wrong because he realized that Yin Wuxia had not replied to him. Ma Yujia also saw Zhuo's awkwardness and hurriedly said, Brother Zhuo, could it be that Elder Yin is plotting against you? If it is, let's leave quickly. We can't stay here for long. Let's wait and see, Zhuo said with a frown. After waiting for a while, there was still no movement from Yin Wuxia's cave abode. Zhuo and Ma Yujia both felt that something was wrong. Junior brother Xiaowen, why are you here? Suddenly, a low voice sounded. Zhuo turned his head and saw a woman in a red dress walking over from behind. This woman was no stranger to Zhuo. It was Qiu Linglong who had gone to the Blue Moon Lake with him. Senior sister Qiu, is Master not in the cave abode? Zhuo asked. Qiu Linglong's pretty face changed slightly. She hurriedly pulled Zhuo's arm and pulled him to the side. She whispered, Junior brother Xiaowen, where have you been all this time? Didn't you hear that Master was locked up? What? Zhuo's face changed slightly. Ma Yujia, who was not far away, was speechless. He originally thought that Zhuo had found a reliable backdoor entry. Now, he realized that this backdoor entry was not reliable at all and was actually locked up. Junior brother Xiaowen, this is not a place to stay for long. Come with me. I'll bring you to a safe place. Qiu Linglong said rather anxiously. Zhuo nodded. Naturally, he had no objections. At the same time, he looked at Ma Yujia and said, Brother Ma, do you want to come with me? Ma Yujia was extremely speechless. He said, I've already boarded your pirate ship. I can only follow you. It's really impossible for me to leave the 10 Extremes In Corpse sect now. Qiu Linglong brought Zhuo and Ma Yujia back to the cave abode she had opened. In order to avoid meeting other disciples, Qiu Linglong basically walked to an extremely remote place. When they returned to Qiu Linglong's cave abode, the three of them let out a sigh and relaxed a lot. Senior sister Qiu Linglong, junior brother Xiao, when wise master was locked up, and who locked him up? Zhuowen asked with a serious expression. Qiu Linglong Qiu Ruyu sighed and recounted the recent events that had happened. Zhuowen's Qiu Yin's Qiu. It's Qiu Studio Uniting time. Unian Lu, Studio of Studio Lu Studio, 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 Studio. He knew that Sakymuni's explanation of resurrection using the reincarnation talisman must have been a lie. Ghost Plume and Sakyamuni were naturally looking for Zhuowen, but Yin Wuxia didn't rat out Zhuowen. Moreover, Yin Wuxia was the 9th elder of the 10 Extremities Yin Corpse sect. His status was very high, and Ghost Plume and Sakyamuni did not dare to touch Yin Wuxia. Later, Sakyamuni summoned the 4th elder, Bai Jingwei, and accused Yin Wuxia of colluding with outsiders. Yin Wuxia was severely injured and imprisoned. Junior brother 1, you're not master's disciple, right? I heard from that senior brother Ghost Plume that you are called Zhuowen, a cultivator from the outside world. Qiu Linglong suddenly looked at Zhuowen. Zhuowen's heart sank, and he didn't say anything. Instead, he looked coldly at Qiu Linglong. You're right, I'm not Elder Yin's disciple. As for my identity, senior sister Qiu is asking too many questions. I just want to know, that Ba Jingwei is also an elder. What qualifications does he have to severely injure and imprison Elder Yin? Zhuowen said, Elder Ba is the 4th elder, and also a lord of creation. Within the sect, his status is far higher than Master's. Moreover, Master did bring an outsider, which gave Elder Ba a reason to attack. Qiu Linglong sighed. Do you know where Elder Yin is imprisoned? Zhuowen suddenly asked. Although Yin Wuxia had tried to kill him, he was now his servant. Moreover, he was imprisoned because of him. Zhuowen naturally couldn't ignore him. This was not his character. Junior brother Xiao won. You want to save Master? Qiu Linglong's beautiful eyes widened in disbelief. Just tell me where Elder Yin is being held. You don't need to ask about what's going to happen next. I don't want to drag you into this right now. Otherwise, your end will be very miserable, Zhuowen said calmly. Qiu Linglong went silent, and then she passed a jade slip to Zhuowen and said, Master is imprisoned at the bottom of Blue Moon Lake. This jade slip records a strand of Master's aura. You can follow this jade slip to sense Master's specific aura. Also, the Blue Moon Lake is heavily guarded. Senior brother Ghost Plume is overseeing it. You'd better not act recklessly. Zhuowen cupped his fists. Senior sister Qiu, don't worry. I won't act recklessly. With that, Zhuowen looked at Ma Yujia seriously. He took out the realm-eluding underworld soul flower from his outside world and handed it to Ma Yujia. Brother Ma, can you help me pass this item to the Pill Array Immortal Alliance's Alliance Master, Ji Wuming? This flower is related to the life of a very important friend of mine. I hope you can help me with this. In return, I'll give you this creation-grade divine herb. Zhuowen took out a creation-grade divine herb and handed it to Ma Yujia. It was one of the 2 creation-grade divine herbs he had obtained from the ancient ruins. Ma Yujia was very surprised. He didn't expect that Zhuowen would be willing to take out a creation-grade divine herb for him to bring the realm-eluding underworld soul flower back to the Pill Array Immortal Alliance. This matter was too simple for him. Hee, brothers' kindness is hard to refuse. I won't be polite. Ma Yujia did not stand on ceremony, as he kept the stock of fortune-grade spirit herb. At the same time, he also kept the realm-fleeing underworld soul flower. Seeing the reward of this fortune-grade spirit herb, Ma Yujia decided to help Zhuo win this time. This is the map of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance's location. Brother Ma, take it and have a good look. Zhuowen took out a jade slip and handed it to Ma Yujia. Ma Yujia felt a little complicated and said, Brother Zhuo, are you really planning to save that Yin Wuxia? I remember that Yin Wuxia's relationship with you isn't that good, right? Elder Yin was captured because of me. I have a certain degree of responsibility, so I have no choice but to take care of this matter. Otherwise, if I ignore Eldarine, I might feel uneasy in the future, Zhuowen said calmly. Ma Yujie looked deeply at Zhuowen, then cupped his fists and said, "If that's the case, then I'll take my leave first. If I delay any longer, the contribution hall will realize that something is wrong. They'll quickly find the aura of the treasures on our bodies. At that time, I won't be able to leave. Brother Zhuo, don't worry. I'll definitely do what I promised you. I definitely won't cheat." Chapter 2872. Ma Yujie was not worried about Ma Yujie. He knew that this fellow had made ample preparations when he decided to enter the Yin underworld. Based on Zhuowen's understanding of Ma Yujie, the latter must have his own secret passage to leave the Yin Corpse sect. When he thought up to here, Zhuowen muttered with slight shame, "Brother Ma, looks like I have to ask you to be my shield this time. A creation-grade divine herb ought to be sufficient to make it up to you." "Senior Brother Zhuowen, what are you talking about?" Xiao Linglong looked at the muttering Zhuowen in confusion. Ever since Zhuowen told Xiao Linglong his name, she no longer called him Junior Brother Xiaowen. Instead, she called him Senior Brother Zhuo. "Nothing, Junior Sister Qiao. I might have to stay in your cave for a few days. After I rescue Eldarine, I'll leave. I won't be a burden to you," Zhuowen said with a smile. Xiao Linglong nodded, but did not say anything. Her eyes flashed with helplessness. In fact, she had tried to persuade Zhuowen to leave the Yin Corpse sect. Yin Wuxia was imprisoned in the Blue Moon Lake where Ghost Plume was. It was heavily guarded. Even a creator would not be able to leave the Blue Moon Lake. Unfortunately, Zhuowen did not listen to her advice. She also knew that it was useless to try to persuade him. At the entrance of the Yin Corpse sect, there were piles of bones and eerie Yin Qi. Ma Yujie's chubby figure appeared sneakily at the entrance. He looked at the guards at the entrance, but did not go over immediately. He did not care about the guards at the entrance. What he cared about was the restriction formation at the entrance. Once he touched the restriction formation at the entrance, he would immediately alert the Yin Corpse sect. At that time, the experts in the sect will be dispatched to hunt him down. Fortunately, I had the foresight to dig a shortcut here. As long as I leave the Yin Corpse sect, I'll be safe. Ma Yujie grinned and carefully came to a very remote corner. All kinds of skeletons were piled up in the corner. Black qi filled the air, adding an eerie feeling to the place. Ma Yujie didn't care about the filth of these skeletons at all. His hands continued to push these skeletons to the side. Underneath the skeleton, there was actually a small and deep tunnel. Ma Yujie looked left and right. After making sure that no one had seen him, he entered the passage. At the same time, he threw a few array flags at the entrance of the cave. The scattered bones gathered together and covered the entrance of the cave. A few 100 kilometers away from the 10 Extremes Yin Corpse sect, a hole was blasted open in the cliff wall. Ma Yujie's fat body crawled out with difficulty. Phew! This trip was unexpectedly smooth. Zhuowen is such a loyal and righteous person. He actually wants to save that Yin Wuxia. Isn't he courting death? I shouldn't say that he's courting death. This guy is definitely dead. However, he was quite honest. Before he died, he left me a creation-grade elixir and a realm-eluding underworld flower. Ma Yujie revealed a wretched smile and took out the creation-grade elixir and the realm-eluding underworld flower from his spirit ring. Like a miser, he flipped the two elixirs over and over again. However, Ma Yujie quickly realized that something was wrong. He kept the creation-grade elixir and only kept the realm-eluding underworld flower. He looked at it over and over again and even extended his divine sense to check. Ma Yujie's expression changed because he realized that the realm-eluding underworld flower was fake. Didn't this guy want to entrust the realm-eluding underworld flower to me and give it to the Pill Array Immortal Alliance to save his friend? Why did he give me a fake realm-eluding underworld flower? Ma Yujie didn't care too much about the realm-eluding underworld flower. Therefore, when he received the realm-eluding underworld flower from Zhuowen, he didn't check it carefully and didn't realize that it was a fake. However, Now that he had observed it and realized that it was fake, he became even more suspicious. He didn't know if Zhuowen did it intentionally or not. If it was intentional, then the realm-eluding underworld flower that this guy took from the ancient ruins might be fake. However, if it was intentional, then the reason behind it was very thought-provoking. Suddenly, the realm-eluding underworld flower in Ma Yujie's hand surged with a blazing light. Along with the blazing light, a terrifying energy kept expanding, as if it would explode at any time. Ma Yujie's expression changed drastically, and an ominous feeling rose in his heart. Without thinking, he immediately threw the realm-eluding underworld flower away and quickly left. Boom! The realm-eluding underworld flower exploded like a bomb. Terrifying waves of air rose, forming a huge mushroom cloud. Because the explosion was simply too terrifying, and because it happened right next to the 10 Extreme Corp sect, it immediately activated the restrictions on the surface of the 10 Extreme Corp sect. Waves of light flowed out of the restrictions, attracting the attention of all the cultivators within the sect. Not good. Someone's causing trouble in our sect. Who is so bold to blow up our 10 Extreme Corp sect? Is he tired of living? We must catch the culprit and let him have a taste of living a life worse than death. I will let him know the consequences of offending our 10 Extreme Corp sect. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. All the cultivators in the 10 Extreme Corp sect were enraged. Even the upper echelons of the sect were alerted. One by one, figures rushed out and rushed towards the explosion site. Zhuowen, F***CKU, you tricked me. Ma Yujie wanted to cry, but no tears came out. He finally understood why Zhuowen was so generous this time and gave him a creation-level divine medicine. It turned out that he wanted to use him as bait to lure away the experts in the 10 Extreme Corp sect, and then this guy would take advantage of the situation. Although Ma Yujie really wanted to rush into the 10 Extreme Corp sect and cut Zhuowen into pieces, when he saw the cultivators in the 10 Extreme Corp sect. However, when he saw the black mass of cultivators rushing towards him from within the 10 Extreme Corp sect, he knew that he would be courting death if he rushed in now. Zhuowen, just you wait. Next time, I will make you suffer so much that even your parents won't recognize you. Ma Yujie threw down these vicious words, took out his flying divine weapon, and quickly left the place. He knew that if he didn't leave now, he wouldn't be able to. He could feel that the creation-level experts in the 10 Extreme Corp sect were on the move. Although he was tough and strong, he would still be tortured badly if he went up against the creation-level experts. Above the surface of the Blue Moon Lake, Gue Ling slowly stood up in the luxurious pavilion, floating in the air. A glint flashed across his eyes. Senior Brother Ghost Plume, someone is causing trouble at our sect's entrance. I suspect that it might be Zhuowen's doing. Sakyamuni walked in from outside the pavilion, his eyes filled with excitement and cruelty. I think so too. This guy is really bold. Is he provoking the 10 Extreme Corp sect? Ghost Plume said with a cold gaze. Hee, this fits Zhuowen's personality. This time, the commotion is too big. It has already alerted my master and 4 other elders. Senior Brother Ghost Plume, let's go. Chapter 2873. Luring the tiger from the mountain, Ghost Plume thought for a moment, then finally agreed to Sakyamuni's suggestion. He had heard from Sakyamuni about Zhuowen's background and knew that he came from one of the 8 heavenly domains. He had only been in the Xianmi heavenly domain for a few hundred years, but he was able to become an immortal master of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance, and his strength was so terrifying. He suspected that there was a huge secret on him. Although this kid is an immortal master of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance, he has to pay a price for offending the 10 Extremes Corp sect. Today, we will capture him and let him know the price of offending the 10 Extremes Corp sect. Ghost Plume stood up and left the Blue Moon Lake with Sakyamuni, rushing toward the sect's entrance. Inside Qiuling Long's cave, Qiuling Long hurriedly came in and said to Zhuowen, Senior Brother Zhua, someone is attacking the 10 Extremes Corpse sect. I don't know who is so bold. Zhuowen's gaze was calm, and he was not surprised. He said, "It's that friend of mine. He holds a deep grudge against the 10 Ultimate Corpse sect, so before he left, it is very normal for him to give your sect a few blows." Qiu Linglong's beautiful eyes were filled with a strange expression. She also felt that there was something fishy, but she did not say it out loud. Senior Brother Zhua, Ghost Plume of the Blue Moon Lake, has already left, and the commotion this time was too big. For elders in the sect were alarmed, and they left their secluded cultivation to chase after the troublemaker. Your friend will be fine, right? Qiu Linglong's beautiful eyes were filled with worry. She felt that Mai Yujia's life was in danger. Zhuowen did not care, and he waved his hand to reassure Qiu Linglong. Mai Yujia had countless trump cards, and this guy was not simple. His ability to escape was even better than his. Although the 10 Extremes Corpse sect was powerful, as long as the sect master, Senki Yin, did not appear, he felt that Mai Yujia would be fine. At most, he would be chased until he was exhausted. Moreover, Zhuowen had already found out from Qiu Linglong that the sect leader of the 10 Extremities Corpse sect, Senki Yin, was currently not in the sect. Instead, he was a guest at the Scarlet Mountain Villa. No matter how big the commotion was, Senki Yin would not appear. "Junior Qiu, I'm on the Blue Moon Lake. It's best if you don't tell anyone about me. Otherwise, you might be implicated." Zhuowen cupped his fists at Qiu Linglong and left the cave. Qiu Linglong's beautiful eyes flashed with a complicated look. She didn't go out to send them off. She could only help up to this point and didn't dare to have too much contact with Zhuowen. If not, she might be in danger as well. After leaving Qiu Linglong's cave, Zhuowen headed straight for the Blue Moon Lake. The 10 Extremities Corpse sect's territory was very large. During the time he was in Qiu Linglong's cave, he had studied the internal geography of the 10 Extremities Corpse sect. He knew that the cave residences of the 10 Extremities Corpse sect's upper echelons were basically far apart. For example, the Blue Moon Lake where Ghost Plume resided was tens of thousands of kilometers away from the 4th Elder Ba Jingwei's cave residence. Even if he flew, it would take a quarter of an hour. In addition, Ba Jingwei, Ghost Plume, and many other experts in the sect were attracted by the commotion caused by Mai Yujia. Zhuowen had enough time to enter the Blue Moon Lake and rescue Yin Wuxia. Soon, Zhuowen arrived near the Blue Moon Lake. Along the way, he saw many disciples of the 10 Extremities Corpse sect rushing out of the sect with anger. The deeper he went into the sect, the fewer people there were. There was no one outside the huge courtyard where the Blue Moon Lake was located. Apart from the private guards belonging to Ghost Plume, this place was very secluded. The Blue Moon Lake was surrounded by the radiance of a formation restriction. Zhuowen was no stranger to this formation. When he first entered this courtyard, he had already discovered that there were 3 types of Genesis tier grand formations fused together. They were an illusion formation, a trap formation, and a killing formation. Zhuowen had already studied these 3 grand formations. Now that he was here again, Zhuowen immediately used the primordial chaos infinity to break these 3 grand formations. In less than 3 breaths of time, Zhuowen had broken the 3 grand formations one by one. The ripples of the formation being broken spread out, attracting the attention of the guards in the courtyard. "Who is it? How dare you trespass in a Lord Ghost Plume's Blue Moon Lake?" More than a dozen cultivators rushed out. They were basically all eternal overlords. Among them, the middle-aged man in the lead was the strongest. He was a half-step Genesis tier expert. Zhuowen couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with these people. He took a step forward, and his body emitted a crystalline light. He punched out fiercely, smashing into the nearest cultivator. "You're courting death. A mere Heavenswell master actually dares to trespass on the Blue Moon Lake. See if I don't kill you." This cultivator was stunned. He naturally noticed that Zhuowen's aura was not strong. He was only a Heavenswell master. When he came back to his senses, a sinister smile appeared on his face. He raised the long saber in his hand and slashed at Zhuowen's fist. The middle-aged man and the other guards didn't make a move. They all watched this scene with cold smiles. They all wanted to see how this arrogant Heaven's Will Master would be cut in half and die tragically in front of them. Bang! Zhuowen shattered the cultivator's long saber with a punch. His long fist was like a rainbow, and it landed on the cultivator's body like a hot knife through butter. A terrifying power exploded, and it was as if Mount Tai was pressing down. The cultivator screamed as his body was torn into a bloody pulp. His divine soul dissipated, and he died just like that in front of everyone. The middle-aged man and the group of people who were watching the show were dumbfounded. Their faces were filled with disbelief. Zhuowen didn't give them time to be stunned. After killing the cultivator with a single move, he dove into the crowd like a dragon. He executed the tyrannical Dao slaughtering technique with both hands, and his entire body turned into a killing machine as he wantonly slaughtered. None of the guards present could withstand a single punch from Zhuowen. They were all killed with a single punch. The middle-aged man was scared out of his wits. His forehead was covered in cold sweat. He roared in fear in his heart. How could he encounter such a terrifying cultivator? What kind of freak was this? He was clearly a Heaven's Will Master, but killing eternal overlords like them was as easy as killing chickens. This was too terrifying. You, go to hell. The moment Zhuowen killed the last cultivator with a single punch, his cold gaze fell on the middle-aged man. The latter trembled all over when he noticed Zhuowen's gaze. He hurriedly knelt and begged for mercy. More than a dozen eternal overlords had been killed so easily. Even he couldn't do it, but the young man in front of him had done it so easily. He knew he was no match for this young man, and he didn't want to die. He could only kneel and beg for mercy. I can spare your life, but I need you to do something for me, Zhuowen said coldly as he came before the middle-aged man. He didn't attack again. Sir, please speak. I'll tell you everything I know. The middle-aged man was scared out of his wits. He didn't dare to disobey Zhuowen. Where is Yin Wuxia imprisoned at Blue Moon Lake? Zhuowen asked. This. The middle-aged man hesitated, as if it was difficult to speak. Speak or die. Choose for yourself. Chapter 2874. Saving Yin Wuxia, the middle-aged man, felt Zhuowen's murderous intent and trembled. He quickly said, I'll talk. Elder Yin is imprisoned at the bottom of the Blue Moon Lake. That's Ghost Plume's private place. It's a forbidden area of the Blue Moon Lake. We've never been there before. You know where it is. Take me there, Zhuowen said indifferently. The middle-aged man was helpless. His life was in Zhuowen's hands, so he had to listen. Soon, the two of them dived into the Blue Moon Lake. The middle-aged man led the way while Zhuowen followed behind. Zhuowen's divine sense was firmly locked on the middle-aged man to prevent him from playing any tricks. At the bottom of the lake, the two of them stopped in front of a 3-story pagoda-like building. The surface of the building was very shabby and covered with moss. Obviously, it had been there for a long time. At the bottom of the pagoda, there was an iron fence. It was pitch black inside. Zhuowen tried to extend his divine sense into the pagoda and found that his divine sense was suppressed. There was an array in the pagoda that blocked divine sense. Boom! Zhuowen blasted the iron fence open with a punch. He didn't go in, but let the middle-aged man go in first. The middle-aged man's legs trembled. He didn't want to enter the forbidden area, but Zhuowen forced him to. He had to bite the bullet and go in. Not long after the middle-aged man went in, he suddenly screamed, and then there was no sound. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed slightly as he pondered in his heart. This pagoda was not simple. However, he did not give up because of this. Since he had already come this far, even if this pagoda was dangerous, he would still continue to step inside and rescue Yin Wuxia. After entering the pagoda, he immediately felt a terrifying pressure. Then, purple light blades swept around him. The light blades were very dense and sharp. They were very fast. Zhuowen didn't have time to react. His whole body was enveloped by the light blades, and blood splattered everywhere. Dozens of terrible wounds appeared on Zhuowen's body, and blood kept flowing out. Zhuowen was shocked. His body was already a 5-star Pangu, sacred body, which was extremely powerful. But the light blades easily cut through his body. What kind of power was this? Before Zhuan could come back to his senses, another wave of light blades swept out from the surrounding walls. Only then did Zhuan notice that there were extremely complicated patterns on the surrounding rock walls. They crisscrossed and intersected with each other. The light blades were formed from these patterns. At the same time, he also noticed that there was nothing else on the first floor of the ancient pagoda other than the stairs in the corner. As for the middle-aged man, he had turned into a pile of meat and scattered to the side. Clearly, the middle-aged man had also been attacked by these light blades. However, this middle-aged man did not have Zhuan's Panga's sacred body, so he could not resist the first wave of light blades and died there. As Zhuan dodged the attacks from the light blades, he quickly healed his body and approached the staircase. When he reached the staircase, he immediately went up to the second floor. The light blades on the second floor were denser and more powerful. As soon as Zhuan entered the second floor, he was immediately blasted into a bloody mist by the endless light blades. Fortunately, Zhuan's self-healing ability was too strong. The bloody mist continued to condense. In a few breaths, Zhuan reformed his body and quickly rushed toward the staircase to the third floor. On the second floor, Zhuan's body was blasted into pieces more than 10 times, and he was blasted into a bloody mist every time. After paying the price of more than 10 times, Zhuan reluctantly reached the staircase and entered the third floor with difficulty. After entering the third floor, Zhuan let out a long breath because he found that there were no light blades on the third floor that he was afraid of. It was extremely quiet, just like an ordinary attic room. Zhuan rested for a while before looking at the third floor. At a glance, he saw the cross in the depths of the floor, where a figure was tied up. This figure was Yin Wuxia. However, at this moment, Zhuan almost couldn't recognize Yin Wuxia. He saw that Yin Wuxia was as thin as a matchstick, like a dried-up person. The aura on his body was extremely weak, like a candle in the wind that could be extinguished at any time. At Yin Wuxia's feet, there was a black skull. This skull was only the size of a palm, and on the top of the skull, there was a strange flower. On the stamen of this flower, there was a face that looked like a vengeful spirit, and it was emitting a heart-palpitating roar. The sound was like a human scream before death, and it made people shudder. Realm elusive underworld soul flower? Zhuan was no stranger to the strange flower growing on the black skull. It was the realm elusive underworld soul flower that he had found in the underworld. At this moment, he realized that the jaws of the black skull beneath Yin Wuxia's feet were constantly moving up and down, as though it was chewing something. The sound of bones colliding with each other gave off a creepy feeling that made one shudder in fear. Then Zhuan realized that Yin Wuxia was screaming, and the essence of his body was being sucked away by the skull. The originally skinny Yin Wuxia's eyes were about to pop out, and he looked very ferocious. Zhuan's expression changed slightly. He felt that this skull was too strange. He suddenly punched out with his right fist, and the skull was smashed to pieces. The instant the skull shattered, a sharp, wretched cry rang out. Next, Zhuan sensed an extremely dense essence, energy spreading out in all directions. This essence was extremely pure. Zhuan didn't even need to take the initiative to absorb it. It automatically entered his meridians and began to circulate, turning into a part of his body strength. The moment Zhuan breathed in the essence qi, he felt as if he was on cloud 9. It was like the feeling of an ordinary person smoking opium. It made him very fascinated, and he wanted to continue absorbing this essence and experience that happiness. Zhuan quickly realized that something was wrong. He rolled up his sleeves and collected this essence into a jade bottle. He didn't continue to absorb it. He didn't know what it was, but he guessed that it wasn't anything good. Before he knew what it was used for, he really didn't dare to use it casually. Zhuan took out a divine pill to recover essence and gave it to Yin Wuxia. Yin Wuxia's pale face finally eased a lot. However, Wuxia had lost too much essence. He was as thin as a stick and didn't even have the strength to speak. He could only look at Zhuowen with gratitude in his eyes. Then he closed his eyes and fainted. After Zhuowen put Wuxia into the outside world, he looked at the remains of the black skull under his feet. He pondered for a moment, but in the end, he put it away. He planned to bring it back to the Pill Array Immortal Alliance and ask Ji Wuming about it. There's actually an array here? Zhuowen was just about to leave the ancient pagoda when he discovered that behind the cross on the third floor, in a very remote corner, there was a very inconspicuous array. With Zhuowen's level of array Dao, it was easy for him to see that this array should be a short-distance transportation array. As for where it led to, Zhuowen didn't know. That ghost plume set up an array here. It's definitely not for fun. I'm afraid that it leads to an extremely mysterious place. Zhuowen's eyes flickered. He was considering whether to enter the transportation array or not. Let's go in and take a look. After thinking for a while, Zhuowen decided to activate the transportation array. He had a feeling that this 10 Extremes Corpse sect was hiding some unspeakable secret. Chapter 2875. Dead Man's Flower. Zhuowen felt dizzy as the light flickered. When he opened his eyes, he was in a new place. This was an extremely gloomy stone room. The decorations in the stone room were very simple. Other than a stone table and a stone stool in the corner, there were no other decorations. In front of the stone room, there was an iron door. The surface of this iron door was overflowing with complicated patterns. It should have been forged from some kind of powerful or material. Zhuowen tried to attack the iron door with all his strength, but he triggered a powerful, mysterious force in the iron door. His right fist was directly blasted into a bloody mist by the reaction force. He grimaced in pain, and his eyes were filled with fear. He knew that it was unrealistic to use brute force to break open this iron door. He suspected that there must be something extraordinary behind this stone door. Zhuowen did not continue to attack the iron door. Instead, he began to size up this stone room. To be more precise, he was observing the stone table in the corner. Walking behind the stone table, Zhuowen found a secret compartment behind the stone table. He opened the secret compartment and found a stack of jade slips and an iron key. Zhuowen put away the iron key. He knew that it should be the key to the iron door. He was not in a hurry to open the iron door. Instead, he casually picked up a jade slip and flipped through the contents. His face immediately became serious and unsightly. This jade slip recorded an experiment called the Dead Man's Flower. Once this flower bloomed, it would have an extremely pure essence that could allow a cultivator's cultivation speed to rise to an unimaginable level. Of course, the Dead Man's Flower was a divine medicine that existed in legends. Moreover, it was an extremely insidious divine medicine. According to the records, the materials needed for the Dead Man's Flower were very simple. One of them was the realm-eluding underworld flower. The other was a living cultivator. Moreover, the stronger the cultivator, the higher the grade of the Dead Man's Flower. The higher the grade of the Dead Man's Flower, the faster the cultivator's cultivation would increase. It was said that the effect of a Dead Man's Flower of the same grade was at least hundreds or thousands of times better than a cultivation pill of the same grade. After reading the contents of the jade slip, Zhuowen's face turned ugly. This Dead Man Flower was definitely a scourge. It was actually a divine medicine that relied on stripping the essence of cultivators to cultivate. However, Zhuowen was very puzzled. In any case, he was an eternal great alchemist, yet he had never heard of this Dead Man Flower before. According to the records, the stronger the cultivator, the stronger the Dead Man Flower would be. Didn't this mean that if this Dead Man Flower was planted on the body of a sky-reaching master, it would be able to bloom into a sky-reaching master flower? Fortunately, the raw material of the Death Man Flower, the realm-escaping underworld soul flower, is not much. I'm afraid that the Death Man Flower will not be produced in large quantities. Zhuowen shook his head and heaved a sigh of relief. He knew very well that if this Dead Man Flower could be cultivated in large quantities, it would definitely be a disaster for cultivators. However, when he flipped open the second jade slip, his expression was very unsightly, and his eyes were filled with shock. In the second jade slip, it basically recorded the experiments of cultivating the dead man flower. The Ten Extremities Corpse sect had been conducting experiments in this area for a long time and seemed to have made a breakthrough. Zhuowen flipped through the next jade slips and found that the rest of the jade slips recorded the process of cultivating the dead man flower. Most of them were failures. Although there were successes, the survival rate of the dead man flower was not high. When Zhuowen saw the last few jade slips, he found that the experimenter had found the most direct way to cultivate the dead man flower, which was to absorb the essence of cultivators to maintain the survival of the dead man flower. Moreover, after the dead man flower absorbed enough essence, it even had the possibility of leveling up. At the same time, it could also give birth to the seeds of the dead man flower and cultivate new dead man flowers. The seeds of the dead man flower were not cultivated in the soil, but in the cultivator's body. These seeds grew by constantly absorbing the essence of the cultivator's body. It was said that the growth cycle was very short. When put away the jade slip, he realized how terrifying this thing was. If he allowed the Corpse sect of the Ten Extremes to spread this dead man's flower, many cultivators would suffer. This was an experiment that went against human ethics. Taking out the iron key, Zhuowen opened the iron door in front of the stone room. With a clang, the iron door opened and a very narrow corridor appeared in front of Zhuowen. On both sides of the corridor were square storage cabinets. The entrance of the storage cabinets was an iron fence. Zhuowen looked through the gaps in the iron fence and found that there was a cultivator lying flat on each storage cabinet. These cultivators were pale like zombies. The strangest thing was that there was a black flower blooming on the top of their heads. This black flower was similar to the elusive underworld soul flower, but it was different. The main difference was that the Qi contained in the black flower was much more terrifying than the elusive underworld soul flower. Dead man flower. Zhuowen's expression did not look good. He knew that these black flowers growing from the cultivators' heads were dead man flowers. Zhuowen flipped through the jade slip in the stone room and basically knew the general idea of the dead man flower. There were records in the jade slip that the elusive underworld soul flower was refined from cultivators. It was the original dead man flower. Because the elusive underworld soul flower was very rare, there were not many original dead man flowers. In the experiment, the Ten Extremities Corpse sect cultivated the dead man flower seeds from the original dead man flower. Through these cultivated seeds, they were planted into the cultivator's flesh and blood to cultivate the second-generation dead man flower. The original dead man flower was very rare, but the second-generation dead man flower was not small. As long as there were enough seeds and cultivators, there would be an endless supply of second-generation dead man flowers. Obviously, the black flowers growing from the cultivators' heads in the storage cabinets on both sides of the corridor were the second-generation dead man flowers. Zhuowen made a rough estimate and found that there were hundreds of cultivators on both sides of the corridor. In other words, there were at least hundreds of second-generation dead man flowers. Not only that, but Zhuowen also found that the cultivators whose flesh and blood energy were being devoured by the dead man flowers were not disciples of the Ten Extremities Corpse sect. They were disciples of other forces in the host region. Zhuowen even saw cultivators from the Scarlet Mountain Villa, Fallen Star Mountain, and other similar Dao Palace forces lying in one of the storage cabinets. Zhuowen guessed that these cultivators should be cultivators who had come to challenge the Nether Hell of the Ten Extremities Corpse sect. These cultivators might have obtained something really good in the Nether Hell and been discovered by the spies of the Ten Extremities Corpse sect. Then, the Ten Extremities Corpse sect sent experts to capture these cultivators and bring them here as nutrients for the dead man flower seeds. The Ten Extremities Corpse sect is really ruthless. They actually did such a cruel experiment. Chapter 2876. Lu Xingjian, if news of the 10 Ultimates in Corpse sect spread, they would be attacked immediately. No faction would let go of a tumor like the 10 Ultimates in Corpse sect. Having this thought, Zhuan took out a recording crystal and recorded everything that had happened. After he left the 10 Ultimates in Corpse sect, he would definitely return to the Pill Array Immortal Alliance and give this recording crystal to Ji Wuming to spread the news. Ji Wuming was the alliance head of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance and had a high prestige in the host region. Adding on the Pill Array Immortal Alliance's status in the host region, if Ji Wuming were to spread this news, most powers would be convinced. At that time, the 10 Ultimates in Corpse sect would be finished. However, Zhuan was different. After all, he was alone and weak. Moreover, he was only a newly promoted Celestial Master. He did not have a strong foundation. If it were him, he might be attacked by the In Corpse sect. After recording, Zhuan walked deeper into the corridor. He had seen the jade slip in the stone room and knew that this was the deepest part of the 10 Ultimates in Corpse sect. It was very secretive and also the 10 Ultimates in Corpse sect's biggest secret. In the 10 Ultimates in Corpse sect, only the true upper echelons had the authority to enter this place. Zhuan knew that Ghost Plume was in the Blue Moon Lake. Since there was a transportation array to enter this place, it was obvious that Ghost Plume had a very high status in the 10 Ultimates in Corpse sect. He was probably not just the #1 genius. According to the Jade Slip, Senki-in cultivated a total of 9 original Deadman flowers. The second-generation Deadman flowers were cultivated from the seeds of these 9 original Deadman flowers. Zhuan thought as he walked deeper into the corridor. He had seen the contents of the Jade Slip and knew that the 9 original Deadman flowers were hidden in the deepest part of the corridor. The second-generation Deadman flowers here were cultivated from the seeds of the original Deadman flowers. As long as the original Deadman flowers were taken away, the 10 Ultimates in Corpse sect would lose the source of the seeds. It would be impossible for the 10 Ultimates in Corpse sect to cultivate a new second-generation Deadman flower, unless they cultivated a new original Deadman flower. Zhuan went deeper. It had to be said that this underground space was very large. Zhuan passed through corridor after corridor. Between the corridors, there were iron fences that contained mysterious energy. Zhuan looked at the contents of the Jade Slip, which recorded the method to open the iron fence. Therefore, these iron fences were not much of a hindrance to Zhuan. As Zhuan continued to descend deeper into the underground space, the originally noisy In Corpse sect became much quieter. One figure after another returned to the sect from the outside world. Most of the cultivators had looks of unwillingness on their faces. Among this group of cultivators, there were 8 people. These 8 people all had vast auras, and their eyes were cold. It was obvious that they were people of high status. Among the 8, Ghost Plume and Sakyamuni were among them, but their expressions weren't particularly good. Apart from Ghost Plume and Sakyamuni, the remaining 6 were 6 of the 10 great elders of the In Corpse sect. Among them was the 4th elder, Ba Jingwei, the 8th elder, Mao Xinho, the 6th elder, Fan Jiaoyang, the 7th elder, Gong Zipeng, and the 10th elder, Gu Hongkai. What was most noteworthy was that all of these elders, including Ba Jingwei, were looking at one of the old men with reverence in their eyes. Even their postures were subtly following behind this old man. This old man was very famous in the In Corpse sect. Ranked above Ba Jingwei, he was the 3rd elder, Lu Xingjian. He was also a creation lord, and his strength was even greater than Ba Jingwei's. Old Ba, go and investigate that cultivator for me. Where did he come from? The few of us attacked together, but we still couldn't take him down. In the end, he escaped. Lu Xingjian's expression was ugly. He looked sternly at Ba Jingwei behind him and said coldly. Ba Jingwei lowered his head and hurriedly complied. He didn't dare to disobey Lu Xingjian. However, there was a trace of disdain and coldness in the depths of Ba Jingwei's eyes. Lu Xingjian's cultivation was slightly higher than his, roughly at the mid-stage creation lord realm. However, Ba Jingwei knew that tens of thousands of years ago, Lu Xingjian's status had been below his. Back then, Lu Xingjian had only been at the early stage Creation Lord realm, while Ba Jingwei had been at the mid-stage. However, Ba Jingwei had participated in the assassination of Yu Xian and had been severely injured by Yu Xian's final counterattack. Because of his injuries, his cultivation had fallen to the early stage Creation Lord realm. In the Yin Corp sect, which was a sect that greatly valued the strong, a drop in cultivation meant a drop in status. Ba Jingwei was originally the third elder, but he was overtaken by Lu Xingjian. In the end, the position of third elder was given to Lu Xingjian, and Ba Jingwei became the current fourth elder. According to the sect's rules, the elders ranked at the top had the right to command the elders ranked at the bottom. Therefore, Ba Jingwei had no choice but to accept Lu Xingjian's orders. Moreover, he had to act subservient in front of Lu Xingjian. Lu Xingjian was quite satisfied with Ba Jingwei's attitude. He continued, I found the token of a patrolling soldier from the underworld on the cultivator who escaped just now. I remember that the person in charge of issuing the token is Elder Shi, right? Sixth Elder Fan Jiaoyang hurriedly said, Yes, Elder Shi often uses this banner to embezzle a lot of resources. However, I always thought that Elder Shi would only give the token to the sect's disciples. However, I didn't expect Elder Shi to be so bold as to give it to a cultivator outside the sect. This time, our Incorp sect has suffered a great loss. Elder Shi can't absolve himself of the blame. Elder Lu, let this old man capture Elder Shi and wait for your judgment. Fan Jiaoyang reacted quickly. He hurriedly walked out and cupped his hands at Lu Xingjian with a fawning smile. Lu Xingjian nodded and said, Then I'll have to trouble Elder Fan. Fan Jiaoyang grinned and left the place. After a while, he brought a haggard old man to Lu Xingjian. Bang! Fan Jiaoyang rudely threw the old man to the ground in front of Lu Xingjian. The old man didn't seem to feel pain. He hurriedly jumped up and knelt in front of Lu Xingjian. He repeatedly kowtowed and said, Third Elder, please spare my life. I know I was wrong. You know what you did wrong? Lu Xingjian said coldly. I shouldn't have sold the token to others so casually. It caused a cultivator from outside the sect to sneak into our Incorp's sect. Elder Shi's voice trembled as he confessed. Now, you know you were wrong? It's too late. Lu Xingjian's eyes were cold and ruthless. His right hand formed a claw and slammed into Elder Shi's head. Boom! Chapter 2877. Ghost Plume's Wrath, Elder Lu. That cultivator has taken on so many of our attacks. His injuries are extremely serious. I'm afraid he's not far from death, Ba Jingwei suddenly said. Lu Xingjian coldly looked at Ba Jingwei and said, Elder Ba, a serious injury doesn't mean death. Watch your words. Ba Jingwei frowned and fell silent, no longer refuting Lu Xingjian. Contact Blood Prison. Those assassins from Blood Prison appear and disappear unpredictably. They are much better at searching compared to us. Hire some Blood Prison assassins to kill off that cultivator. We will not let off those who offend our 10 Extreme Incorp's sect easily. Otherwise, the reputation of our 10 Extreme Incorp's sect will be sullied. Lu Xingjian's gaze was cold and indifferent. Although Ba Jingwei was displeased, he could only nod in agreement. Elder Lu, there's nothing for me to do here. I'll go arrange the Blood Prison assassins first. Ba Jingwei did not want to stay here any longer. He cupped his hands at Lu Xingjian and left. Lu Xingjian did not stop him. He only looked at Ba Jingwei's departing figure indifferently. Then, he waved his sleeve and said, Go and arrange for the informants in the sect to gather as much information as possible about that cultivator. The more detailed, the better. Once I find out who that cultivator is, I'll not only kill him, I'll also destroy the power behind him. I'll uproot him and destroy his family. Everyone agreed and quickly dispersed. Lu Xingjian also left the place and headed for his own cave. Sakyamuni and Ghost Plume didn't leave, but their expressions didn't look too good. Originally, when they learned that there was a foreign cultivator causing trouble near the sect and escaping from the sect, they thought that it was Zhuowen. However, when they chased after him, they discovered that the troublemaker was not Zhuowen, but a fat man. Moreover, the fatty was very despicable. As he fled, he kept cursing. He cursed almost everyone who was chasing after him. If this wasn't a big deal, the fatty's mouth wasn't ordinary. Not only did he curse them, but he also cursed their 18 generations of ancestors and anyone related to them. At that time, all the cultivators who were chasing after the fatty, including Lu Xingjian, had ugly expressions on their faces. They felt that the fatty was asking for a beating. However, that fatty's ability to escape was simply too powerful. Even though Lu Xingjian had gathered Ba Jingwei and the other 5 elders, they were still unable to catch up to that fatty. They were only able to use long-range attacks to seriously injure that fatty. That Zhuowen should have been brought in by Yin Wuxia. Since the one who escaped wasn't Zhuowen, then where could that Zhuowen be? Sakyamuni frowned, puzzled. Ghost Plume said in a deep voice, "I'm not sure, but I'm sure that Zhuowen is still in the 10 Extremes Yin Corpse sect. If he left the 10 Extremes Yin Corpse sect, it's impossible for there to be no news from our sect." Sakyamuni nodded, feeling a little helpless. Although he hated Zhuowen to the bone, he couldn't wait to find him and kill him. However, he had completely lost all clues. He didn't know where Zhuowen was, let alone take revenge. Suddenly, the communication Jade Talisman at Ghost Plume's waist lit up. He sensed something and opened the communication Jade Talisman. His expression suddenly became very ugly. "Senior Brother Ghost Plume, what's wrong?" Sakyamuni saw that Ghost Plume's expression was not right and quickly asked, "My cave abode has been destroyed. I have to go back and take a look." Ghost Plume's expression was anxious. He didn't explain much and hurriedly left the place. Sakyamuni was surprised. Ghost Plume was the #1 monster in the 10 Extremes Yin Corpse sect. Moreover, his status in the sect had always been very high and respected. In the sect, almost everyone knew the location of Ghost Plume's cave abode. Who was so bold as to destroy Ghost Plume's cave abode, even though they knew it was his cave abode? When Gue Ling returned to his cave abode, he saw the dilapidated courtyard, the destroyed formation restriction, and the corpses of the dead guards lying on the ground. His eyes burned with rage. Who is it? Who dares to cause trouble in my cave abode? Ghost Plume was so angry that he stomped his feet and roared furiously. He had never suffered such humiliation before. The anger in his chest was difficult to suppress and urgently needed to be vented. Sakyamuni arrived soon after. He was shocked when he saw the ruins around the Blue Moon Lake. Someone actually dared to destroy Ghost Plume's cave abode. This person was too bold. Sakyamuni didn't doubt that if Ghost Plume found the culprit, he would definitely beat him to death to vent his anger. "Senior Brother Ghost Plume, do you think it's Zhuowen? Since Elder Yin Wuxia is related to Zhuowen, and Elder Yin was imprisoned by you," Sakyamuni suddenly said. Ghost Plume calmed down. His expression changed greatly. He kicked off with his right foot and dived into the Blue Moon Lake. Sakyamuni also realized that his guess might be correct. He hurriedly followed behind Ghost Plume. Not long after, Ghost Plume and Sakyamuni dived to the bottom of the lake and arrived in front of the ancient pagoda. Sakyamuni was no stranger to the ancient pagoda. Ghost Plume had brought him here before. It was also at that time that he learned about the 10 Extremities Yin Corpse sect cultivating the Dead Man Flower. Of course, Sakyamuni didn't think that cultivating the Dead Man Flower was a big deal. Instead, he quickly accepted it, because the essence energy provided by the Death Flower could greatly increase his cultivation speed, allowing him to quickly level up. Instead, he was addicted to the pleasure of absorbing the Death Flower. "Senior Brother Ghost Plume, this ancient pagoda has traces of human activity," Sakyamuni said with a grave expression. Ghost Plume's expression was ferocious. He took a deep breath and calmed himself down with great difficulty. Then, he led Sakyamuni into the ancient pagoda. Ghost Plume knew the ancient pagoda all too well. The moment they entered the pagoda, blades of light flew towards them. However, the trajectories of these blades of light seemed to be fixed. Ghost Plume stood there, but the blades of light actually flew around him, not attacking him at all. Thump, thump, thump. Ghost Plume and Sakyamuni walked up the stairs and finally arrived at the third floor of the ancient pagoda. When they saw the empty third floor of the ancient pagoda, Gui Ling's expression changed drastically. It really was Zhuowen. He saved Yin Wuxia, Sakyamuni muttered to himself. Ghost Plume was silent. He quickly went behind the cross and saw the teleportation array on the ground. His eyes were filled with killing intent. Junior brother Shurtian, quickly go find Elder Ba and the others. Zhuowen has entered the secret room. We must kill him. Otherwise, I'm afraid our 10 Extremes Yin Corpse sect will be in trouble. Ghost Plume instructed Sakyamuni and entered the teleportation array. With a flash of light, Ghost Plume disappeared from the teleportation array. Sakyamuni didn't enter the teleportation array. Instead, he left the ancient pagoda and prepared to inform Ba Jingwei and the other elders. He knew that it was very likely that Zhuowen had passed through the teleportation array and entered the underground secret room. Chapter 2878. Deep in the secret chamber, Zhuowen's eyes were solemn as he stared at the cold iron door in front of him. His expression did not look good. The patterns on the iron door in front of him were complex and clear, and they were filled with mysterious power. What made him even more fearful was the cold air that spread from the surface of the iron door. Even he felt terrified by it. In addition, an extremely powerful restriction was set up on the surface of the iron door. This restriction was of a very high level. It should be a peak Genesis grade formation. It covered the surface of the iron door, making the iron door even more terrifying. Zhuowen tried to break open the iron door with brute force, but he was sent flying by the reaction force of the iron door. Moreover, the cold air that spread from the surface of the iron door was very terrifying. It spread from Zhuowen's right arm to his entire body, almost freezing half of his body into ice. If it were not for the fact that Zhuowen's Pengasacred body was extremely extraordinary, Zhuowen would have died when he attacked the iron door. This is the deepest iron door in this underground chamber. It's also the most powerful iron door. If I want to open this iron door, I have to break the restriction on the surface of the iron door. Zhuowen's eyes were solemn. He knew that it was basically impossible to break open the iron door by force. Thinking of this, he sat down cross-legged and waved his sleeve, summoning array flags. He formed a seal with both hands and used the profound primordial infinity at the same time. This restriction was indeed difficult to deal with, but it was not at the level of the creation grade. At most, it was at the peak of the Genesis grade. As long as the restriction was not at the level of the creation grade, with Zhuowen's current level of formation skills and the profound primordial infinity, it was not difficult to break it. Zhuowen's technique was very familiar. Waves of formation, breaking energy spread out from his hands and landed on the restriction in front of him. Suddenly, the light of the restriction on the surface of the iron door began to shake rapidly. All kinds of light surged like waves in the sea. It was extremely turbulent. Zhuowen's eyes were calm. The power of the primordial infinity continued to surge out from his fingertips, causing the formation on the metal door to become even more turbulent. However, amidst this chaos, Zhuowen could clearly feel that the restrictive power on the surface of the iron gate was weakening. Sensing this change, Zhuowen's eyes widened. He knew that this restriction wouldn't last for long. As long as he could break the restriction, he would have a way to open the last iron door. While Zhuowen was breaking the formation, in the outermost stone room of the underground chamber, there was a flash of brilliance, and a handsome young man appeared. The young man looked around and saw that the iron door at the front of the stone chamber had been blasted open. His face turned ugly. This youth was none other than Ghost Plume. Gui Ling's gaze shifted and landed on the stone table in the corner. He took a step to the front of the stone table and saw that the secret compartment at the back of the stone table had been opened. The jade slips that were piled up in the secret compartment were all gone. His eyes burned with rage. Zhuowen, you actually dare to take away such a secret. Today, I'll make sure you die a miserable death. Ghost Plume suppressed his anger and smashed the stone table to smithereens with his right hand. He then took a step forward and rushed into the depths of the iron door. Kacha! A muffled sound, like glass shattering, spread out in the surroundings. Zhuowen suddenly opened his eyes, and joy appeared in his eyes. Countless cracks had appeared on the surface of the iron door. These cracks weren't from the door itself, but from the restriction placed on the surface of the door. He knew that the restriction on the surface of the iron door was about to be broken. Finally, the cracks spread to the extreme and finally shattered in a fine powder. Behind the restriction, the lines on the surface of the iron door became even clearer. It was as if the fog had dissipated, making it even clearer. Zhuowen couldn't contain his joy. He stomped his feet and gathered strength in his right fist before smashing it against the iron door. Rumble! A thunder-like explosion spread out, and an invisible wave of air spread out in all directions. The entire underground chamber seemed to be unable to withstand this huge force and began to shake violently. It was as if the sky was falling and the earth was cracking. It was extremely terrifying. The patterns on the surface of the iron door suddenly lit up, and a blue cold air blasted towards Zhuowen. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes, and his entire body began to freeze. It seemed as if he would turn into an ice sculpture at any moment. Break for me! Zhuowen's eyes were calm. He didn't care about his current situation. Instead, he used heaven and earth annihilation and a terrifying destructive energy condensed on his fist. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, Zhuowen blasted out several hundred punches. The power of each punch was extremely terrifying. It seemed as if they could destroy the heavens and earth and shatter the heavens. The heaven and earth annihilation's essence lay in annihilation. The destructive energy produced by using this essence seemed capable of destroying everything. Terrifying destructive energy permeated through the air. The iron door was finally unable to withstand the overwhelming force and completely shattered. Zhuowen faced the strong wind and stepped through the iron gate. His long hair was blown by the strong wind and fluttered behind him. He looked like a peerless demon god and was in high spirits. In the instant that he passed through the iron door, Zhuowen's eyes were filled with vigilance. His divine sense constantly scanned the area, and he didn't dare to relax in the slightest. Behind the iron door was a very spacious stone chamber. However, this stone chamber was constructed in an extremely luxurious manner. The rock walls were forged from all types of rare ores. The purpose of this stone chamber was most likely to be used to reinforce this secret stone chamber. Holy Flame Light Stone, Soul Renunciation Rock, Broken Dragon Dense Sand. Zhuowen kept muttering to himself as he looked at the surrounding rock walls. His eyes were bloodshot. The rock walls of the stone chamber were all made from God of Creation grade materials. Furthermore, all of them were precious God of Creation grade materials. Normally, it would be very difficult for Zhuowen to obtain such materials. However, in the surrounding rock walls, they were everywhere. Zhuowen's heart couldn't help but race. He became extremely hot. Zhuowen hurriedly summoned Xiao He from the Great World. Kid, what are you doing? I'm cultivating in seclusion in the Sword Tomb. Why did you call this Dragon Lord out in such a hurry? Xiao He's gaze was unfriendly as he complained incessantly. Look at the ores and materials around you. The value of these materials is probably much higher than the Sword Tomb in the Great World, right? Zhuowen said softly with a smile on his face. Xiao He's gaze fell on the surrounding rock walls. Immediately, his eyes widened as if someone had pinched some lifeline. Oh my God, there are so many materials. Xiao He's attitude immediately changed 180 degrees. He kept praising Zhuowen and summoned the Blood Immortal Sword and the Death Sacrifice Sword. Chapter 2879, The Original Dead. Flower Zhuowen shook his head and ignored the madness of the three divine swords. He looked around and observed his surroundings. He found that the stone room around him was very spacious. Bookcases were placed in most of the space, and jade slips were placed in these bookcases. In addition to the bookcases, Zhuowen also saw the same storage cabinets that he had seen in the corridor before. However, these storage cabinets were not that big. They were only the size of a human head. Inside these storage cabinets were black skulls with blooming black flowers. Zhuowen knew that these were all formed dead flowers. Moreover, Zhuowen could clearly feel that the death flower in this huge stone room contained much more energy than the death flowers in the storage cabinets in the corridor. At the front of these storage cabinets, Zhuowen saw an altar made of jade. Below the altar, there were 9 futons. The 9 praying mats floated in the air, and a golden skeleton sat cross-legged on each praying mat. Although they were skeletons, their surface was golden, and they exuded an indescribable majestic aura. It was obvious that these golden skeletons must have been peerless experts when they were alive. At the top of the skulls of these 9 golden skeletons, there were 9 golden flowers growing. The 9 golden flowers looked very similar to the dead flowers outside. However, the energy revealed on the surface of the golden flowers was too rich. It was much richer than all the second-generation dead flowers outside combined. I'm afraid this is the original dead flower. What a rich essence. With the help of the essence of these 9 original dead flowers, I'm afraid that my cultivation will progress by leaps and bounds. Zhuowen felt the surging essence energy in the golden flowers. His expression changed slightly, and his eyes became a little hot. Although he was very opposed to the method of making the dead flowers, he had to admit that the essence of the dead flowers was unimaginably beneficial to his cultivation. His original body was already the master of destiny. If he could get one of the original dead flowers, it would not be a problem for his original body to break through to the master of destiny. The surging essence of the flower could even enhance the power of Zhuowen's Pangu, sacred body. However, Zhuowen did not act rashly. He could feel that the surface of these 9 primitive dead man flowers was filled with a faint brilliance. The killing intent contained within them was something that even Zhuowen was wary of. He knew that the primordial dead flower was extremely important. The sect leader of the 10 Extreme Een Corpse sect, Senki Een, would definitely have set up a terrifying killing array around the primordial dead flower. Zhuowen took a few steps back. With a wave of his sleeve, he swept all the dead man flowers around him into his great world. At the same time, he did not let go of any of the jade slips on the bookshelves around him. With Zhuowen's current strength, everything around him was swept into the outside world in the blink of an eye. What surprised him was that there were close to 1,000 dead man flowers in the stone room. However, he was even more aware that these 1,000 dead man flowers were actually not as precious as a single primitive dead man flower. Whoosh! Suddenly, the sound of something breaking through the air came from the depths of the corridor behind him. It was getting closer and closer. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and released his powerful divine sense like a tide. He immediately discovered that about 100 meters behind him in the corridor, a young man with an unfriendly expression was rushing towards him. Ghost Plume? He has actually returned. Zhuowen frowned slightly. Looking at Ghost Plume's expression, he was afraid that Ghost Plume already knew that Zhuowen had broken into this underground secret room. Zhuowen was even more aware that if Ghost Plume knew, then the other experts of the 10 Extreme Een Corpse sect would soon know as well. Time was of the essence. Thinking of this, Zhuowen immediately took out the Ho-E godly bow and took out an arrow from his great world. He drew the arrow to 1/3 of an arc, and a terrifying killing intent immediately filled the entire stone room. Zhuowen was becoming more and more proficient in using the Ho-E godly bow. Moreover, the arrow shot from the Ho-E godly bow did not need to be stored up. It could be shot out in an instant, and its power was terrifying. Ghost Plume was much stronger than Een Wuxia. Even if Zhuowen had the power of a 5-star Pangu sacred body, he would most likely be at a disadvantage in a head-on confrontation with Ghost Plume. Unless Zhuowen's Pangu sacred body could reach the peak of the 5-star level, then he would have an absolute advantage in a battle with Ghost Plume. Moreover, time was of the essence. Ghost Plume already knew of his existence, so he would definitely inform the other experts of the sect. He had to get rid of Ghost Plume as soon as possible before those experts arrived. Boom! Zhuowen gently loosened the fingers on his right hand. Suddenly, a thunderous sound resounded, and an arrow shot out like lightning. The terrifying killing intent was like an erupting wave that filled the entire stone room, giving people an extremely tragic and suffocating feeling. At this moment, Ghost Plume's body was like lightning, flying through the corridor at an extremely fast speed. Along the way, he saw the iron doors in front of him being opened one after another. His eyes were spitting fire, and he knew that Zhuowen had entered the deepest part of the secret chamber. Finally, Ghost Plume arrived in front of the deepest part of the stone room. When he saw the huge iron door being blasted to pieces, the anger in his heart erupted like a volcano. At the same time, Gui Ling also saw that behind the broken iron door, there was a lofty figure standing tall like a mountain. He saw the young man's mocking smile, and then Ghost Plume's hair stood on end. This was because he felt an unbearable, murderous intent. This murderous intent was so terrifying that it invaded his body, making him feel as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. Ghost Plume reacted quickly, and his gaze instantly fell on the arrow that had just left the young man's hand. The speed of the arrow was extremely fast. It tore through the void, releasing the sound of cloth being torn apart. It was extremely ear-piercing. Retreat. Ghost Plume immediately retreated. At the same time, he took out a black and white compass from his spirit ring, formed a seal with his right hand, and pointed at the center of the compass. Suddenly, the black and white compass emitted a blazing light, and two terrifying black and white beasts appeared, blocking in front of Ghost Plume. What surprised Zhuowen was that these two black and white beasts were quite powerful. They were actually able to block the arrow that was filled with murderous intent. However, from the violent trembling of the black and white beasts, it could be seen that they were barely able to block the arrow, as if they would fall at any time. Ghost Plume's expression was not good. This black and white compass was given to him by a sect master Senkiyin, and it was a half-step creation grade divine tool. Its power was much stronger than those Genesis grade divine herbs. However, Ghost Plume did not expect the black and white compass to barely block the arrow. It was clear that the arrow was terrifying and powerful. No wonder this guy is so arrogant. He actually has such a powerful trump card. But without this trump card, he's like a bird with broken wings. He's no threat at all. Ghost Plume's eyes flickered. He knew that Zhuowen's strength was not strong, and he mainly relied on this arrow. As long as he could block the arrow, Zhuowen wouldn't have to fear him. Chapter 2880. Interrogation. Zhuowen, you're so confident because of this arrow? You're nothing compared to me now that you've lost your arrow. Ghost Plume breathed a sigh of relief when he saw the black and white compass deflect the arrow. His gaze fell on Zhuowen, and he couldn't help but sneer. You're right. Most of my strength does come from this arrow, but it's enough to kill you, Zhuowen said indifferently. Ghost Plume laughed loudly, his laughter full of mockery. Just as he was about to mock Tang Weilin, his face suddenly stiffened. He saw Zhuowen leisurely take out another arrow from his spirit ring, knocked it on that ordinary wooden bow, and slowly drew it back a third of an arc boom. Suddenly, a terrifying killing intent filled the entire stone room. Moreover, Zhuowen didn't stop there. He clenched his right hand, the veins on his arm bulging as he forcibly drew the bowstring to 2/3 of an arc. His killing intent was magnified several times at this moment. That terrifying killing intent was simply too frightening. It was like a giant wave that filled the entire space, unbridled and unrestrained. This guy, Ghost Plume, was dumbstruck. He didn't expect Zhuowen to be able to shoot a second arrow. Moreover, this arrow was even more terrifying than the first. If this arrow was shot out, even the black and white compass wouldn't be able to block it. Ghost Plume was horrified at this thought. He wanted to retreat, but he was entangled by the first arrow. If he wanted to retreat, he would have to endure the first arrow's attack. Damn it! Ghost Plume cursed. His eyes flashed with determination as he gave up on the black and white compass and turned to flee. Whoosh! The moment Ghost Plume gave up on the black and white compass, the black and white behemoth dissipated. The first arrow, filled with killing intent, shot out explosively and blasted into Ghost Plume's back. Ghost Plume was already prepared. He shifted his body several inches to the side, allowing the arrow to pass through his shoulder blade and into the stone wall beside him. Poochie! Ghost Plume let out a muffled groan and spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was pale and bloodless as he fell to the ground. But very quickly, he crawled back up and continued to flee forward. Zhuan's eyes were cold. He loosened the fingers on his right hand, and the second arrow shot out. It carried a fierce, killing intent like an angry dragon. Ghost Plume screamed. He frantically tried to escape, but the arrow was too fast. Moreover, the killing intent in the arrow had locked on a Ghost Plume. No matter where Ghost Plume went, he would be hunted down by the arrow. Poochie! The arrow pierced through Ghost Plume's back, bringing with it a mist of blood. The Ghost Plume was sent flying into the air by the terrifying force of the arrow, then heavily smashed into the rock wall in front of him. His entire body was embedded in the rock wall, creating a human-shaped crater. Zhuan took a step forward and lifted Ghost Plume with his right hand. He understood the meaning behind Zhuan's words. Zhuan, this underground secret room is very important. Now that you've trespassed here, the sect leader won't let you off. When the time comes, you'll face the endless pursuit of the 10 ultimate in-corpse sect. If you let me go and promise that today's matter won't be leaked, I'll definitely protect you and let you leave the 10 ultimate in-corpse sect safely. Ghost Plume made a solemn vow and looked at Zhuan with a fervent gaze. Slap! Unfortunately, Ghost Plume was greeted with a resounding slap that stunned Ghost Plume. I don't believe your promise at all. I'll ask you for the third time now. Is there another teleportation array here? If you still don't answer, then you won't have the chance to. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.